一丁やってみっか。
First up this episode is Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden, or Super Martial Arts Legend as it means in English, and the title screen leads right to the first fight of story mode, isn't that cool? I'm just going to warn you right away, if you have no interest in this franchise you might just want to skip this one. I will be talking about a lot of stuff, and if you've never read or watched the series you'll probably be lost. Unless you just love the sound of my awful voice, that is. This is a Switch version given out as a download for people who pre-ordered the Switch port of Dragon Ball FighterZ. It has replaced music thanks to the Kenji Yamamoto plagiarism scandal. This is probably the first Dragon Ball fighting game, but I can't find an exact release date for the arcade game simply named Dragon Ball Z, which was released the same year. This one is likelier to have been released first since it came out in March, but that's not a guarantee. If you want to know what was going on in the franchise at that time, in the manga the most recent chapter at the time was chapter 414, which was Vegeta's freak out over Trunks' death leading to Cell ruining Gohan's arm. In the anime, the most recent episode was episode 178, which was the second episode covering Goku's fight with Cell. And the most recent film was the 8th Dragon Ball Z film and 11th Dragon Ball film overall, Burn Up, Hot Fight, Fierce Fight, Super Violent Fight, released exactly 2 weeks earlier. Add to that the months of development and we have a game that mostly covers a story arc that wasn't even finished yet by the time the game was even out. So, I love Dragon Ball, as some might have guessed from watching some earlier episodes as I referenced it a few times. Remember back in my Mortal Kombat video where I said that Mortal Kombat was one of only 2 franchises I still get really opinionated over? Well, this is the other one. I first caught it back in 1999 when I was 6. I saw ads for it on Cartoon Network, but even at 6 years old, I was a grumpy fucker who thought every new thing that was advertised was crap until I'd accidentally catch an episode. In this case, I first caught the episode covering Piccolo's death and Goku's fight with Nappa with the Ocean Studios voice cast, and I was hooked. But mentioning a dub voice cast brings me to the part that will make many people stop watching. As I got older and into my teen years, I did find watching Dragon Ball much harder to stomach, and when I was 14, exactly half my life ago now, holy shit, I made the permanent switch over to watching it in Japanese and started collecting the manga 2 years later. Whether it be Ocean Studios, Funimation in-house or Blue Water Studios, I cannot stand to watch Dragon Ball dubbed in English anymore. I realised that what kept me coming back to the series was the strength of Akira Toriyama's storytelling and characters shining through despite the dub's handlings, not because of it. This isn't a general rule for me with other things, because I'm not a general anime fan. This is just something that only applies to Dragon Ball. Going back, I do not like how Funimation handled the series and continues to handle it. In fact, I can't stand watching any of the English dubs anymore, except for the humorously bad ones by AB Group and Speedy. I am not a fan of the acting of Sean Schemmel or Christopher Sabat even outside of their work in Dragon Ball, and I do not like the Bruce Faulconer replacement score and didn't even like it as a kid. Even actors I like, such as Laura Bailey, I find their Dragon Ball work much lower quality than everything else they've ever done. I bring this up because I will be exclusively using the Japanese names in regards to the characters or the best ways to adapt their name puns into English if possible, because nowhere in the version of the franchise I still like is anyone or anything called, for example, Tien, Master Roshi, a Special Beam Kellen or a Super Saiyan. I won't even be using the dub names of the tags, even if it'll help me out. One thing I do have to bring up in direct response to the "you're not Japanese, stop saying it like that" crowd is that names like Tenshinhan and Kuririn are names used in official English products. Not only are they right there in English on all the subtitle tracks, but they're used in the English translation of the manga itself. You know, the one Akira Toriyama actually wrote, so that particular excuse for getting mad won't fly. Besides, you yourselves are already using untranslated Japanese terms all the time when you talk about the series. For example, Masenko. That's not a made up term, that's just Japanese for Demon Flash. By your logic, you should always be saying Demon Flash and not Masenko, because Masenko is Japanese and you're not Japanese. Not to mention, different English dubs got different names and pronunciations from each other, so I'd still be saying things different anyway. While I did get some Funimation in-house episodes as a kid, I mainly had the Ocean Studios cast for Dragon Ball Z and Blue Water Studios for Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball GT. For example, for those of us in the UK and Canada, in English this guy was called Picon, this guy was called General Locke, this guy was called E. Shenron, this species was the Sufals, and the majority of Blue Water Dragon Ball kept the Japanese names for characters who either never appeared in Z to get renamed, or were really minor, such as Tao Pai Pai, Sergeant Metallic, and Murasaki. Now I won't spend loads of the video shitting on the dubs. Unless people are twats in the comments, then I will do that in the next Dragon Ball game video I do. I will also stop to explain why I use certain names or the way I choose to say them, in the hopes any dub-only fans watching understand why. For example, you may have already picked up the way I said Goku. The simple reason is that's how it's pronounced. Watch anything in the language that word is from and you'll hear the emphasis placed on the second syllable. That's just one example, but I'll get to the rest when I get to those characters. That's all I want to say regarding that whole thing. Simply don't be a dick and I won't be a dick back. I mean, I'm not unsympathetic. Being in the UK, I grew up with 4 different English voice casts, so I get being attached. But in my case, that attachment just didn't stay. There are some English voices I do like, just to get some positivity in there. I like Scott McNeil's Piccolo, Brian Drummond's Vegeta, early on anyway, and Chris Ayre's Frieza, but that's about it. There will be certain attitudes from the Western fanbase I will have opinions about, and they may have been caused by certain decisions the dubs made, such as the over-obsession with imaginary numbers, but I won't use those as a reason to crap on the dubs themselves. Now for the franchise itself, I love basically the whole thing. Even my least favourite story arcs I still like quite a bit. When I say the whole thing, I mean Akira Toriyama's manga and most of the 2 anime series that came from it. Most of the films released during the original run I find pretty bad, and Dragon Ball GT is about a third good, a third bad, and a third indifference to me. However, I respect Dragon Ball GT far more than I respect Dragon Ball Super, which brings me to my feelings on the franchise in its current state. First off, Dragon Ball Kai was a worthless product and an utter mess. Second, Dragon Ball the manga ended in 1995, and the anime ended with GT in 1997. It ended. That's the key word. I bring this up because even before Battle of Gods was announced, I was seeing people acting like a return was necessary or inevitable and acting as if Dragon Ball was struck down too early or taken from us too soon. But that's not what happened at all. It simply reached its logical endpoint, which was when the author had had enough. Remember, both the manga and anime ran weekly for 11 years each. We had 519 weekly manga chapters, 508 weekly anime episodes counting GT, 3 TV specials and 17 theatrical films from 1984 to 1997. Add to that the sheer amount of games that came out during its run and didn't stop apart from one 5-year break after Final Bout in 1997, and that's a staggering amount of content that most other franchises would kill to have. Not to mention, said 5-year gap between games didn't affect the English-speaking audience because that was when we were actually getting the series on TV for the first time. Hell, a lot of Western fandom tries to find some writing reason for GT not doing as good in the ratings in Japan, leading to the lack of any continuation, but the explanation is really simple. People had been following it weekly for over a decade and had already got all they needed from it. The magazine Dragon Ball is printed in, Weekly Shonen Jump, is targeted at children from around 5 or 6 and up. A 6-year-old who started Dragon Ball with Chapter 1 in 1984 would have been 18 when GT started in 1996 and 19 when it ended. Bear in mind, they would have already seen the manga end on Chapter 519 a year earlier. Most fans back then would have felt franchise fatigue. They'd have checked out a couple episodes but already had their Dragon Ball fill and felt no real need to keep going. I mean, how many things that you watched when you were a child have you still religiously followed for at least 12 years without needing to take a single break? There may have been some, but I imagine you haven't followed everything you watched. And that's what happened with Dragon Ball GT. Simple fact is, Dragon Ball was not a Western comic book handled by many different writers over a period of time designed to go on forever. It was written by a single man, based purely on his own taste and sense of humour, and finished when he was done with writing it. Yes, the anime and films had many people handling them, but the films only existed to promote the anime that only existed to promote said manga being written by one man. I had to get all this out of the way because of how relevant it is to my feelings on Dragon Ball over the last decade. So even before Kai, we got the 2008 Jump Super Anime Tour special, Heya, Son Goku and his friends return. It was a fun small little thing. Nice seeing the characters again one more time, and that updated Chala Head Chalara opening with the Blue Era cast almost got me a little emotional at the time. Thing is, that's all it really had going for it, and with an actual revival starting 5 years later, the entire thing is just kinda obsolete. 2010 gave us Plan to Eradicate the Super Saiyans, a Sean's remake of an animated companion to a Famicom RPG included as a bonus on Raging Blast 2. I'll talk about that more either if I do Raging Blast 2 or if I start covering the whole Plan side series. All I'll say is, it's not good and utterly forgettable. I almost forgot to even bring it up here. So before 2011, I felt the worst that Dragon Ball had to offer was either the 7th Dragon Ball Z film, Extreme Battle, The 3 Great Super Saiyans, or Dragon Ball GT's Super Number 17 arc. But 2011 is where the franchise started to outdo itself on lowest points, starting with Episode of Bardock. An utter shit, worthless sequel to a great TV special that completely misses every single good point of the special and the ultimate example of fans becoming writers not exactly being the best idea. But I'll talk about that more when I get to a game that includes Bardock. In 2012 we got the announcement of Battle of Gods coming in 2013, and I was apprehensive about it. After Episode of Bardock I wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea of dragging Dragon Ball out of its grave and risk doing to the main cast what Episode of Bardock did to Bardock. But it was being written by Akira Toriyama, and the 10-year gap at the end of the series had only been covered by the 2008 special at that point, so it had some ideas I was interested in. Then we got the announcement of a Super Saiyan God, and I was just thinking, that sounds stupid, and I was cautious again. But when I saw it, it became by far my favourite Dragon Ball film. I still don't like Super Saiyan God story-wise, though I actually like the design, but I enjoyed just about everything else in that film. It's also the only thing in the revival era to justify being set in the 10-year gap. However, last time I watched it in 2018, after Dragon Ball Super had finished airing and that year's film was announced, I found myself struggling to enjoy it and I couldn't even finish it. All I could see was the beginning of trends that I now hate about the current franchise. More recoloured transformations, over-focus on nostalgia, gotta force Frieza in somewhere, Beerus and Whis being overused so much that their impact has just fizzled, freezing the cast into their Buark designs where they're the most marketable and nostalgic, and being afraid to move forward. That last one is the big one for me. What I loved about the series is that it wasn't afraid to age the cast and move forward. This character is marketable as a child? Well, no one stays a child forever, so he has to age. Future Trunks is a popular character? Well, his story is done, so he was removed from the cast instead of being given an awkward excuse to keep him around. In a story that's all about progression, freezing the characters in place in an earlier point from where the series ended so they can't get too old, completely goes against that progression and is just a cowardly move. And that's why I can't enjoy my favourite Dragon Ball film anymore. Shame. A few months after Battle of Gods we got Jaco the Galactic Patrolman. It's only barely connected to Dragon Ball by the ending, and the manga would be just as strong if the Dragon Ball connection wasn't there. I liked it a lot, but that's all I have to say about it. However, when it got released in a collected volume in 2014, it had Dragon Ball Minus put onto the end of it. It dethroned Episode of Bardock as the worst Dragon Ball story in my eyes. It missed the point of why the Bardock special was so good even more than that did, and damages just about every character that was included in it. Definitely the worst thing Akira Toriyama has written related to Dragon Ball. 2015 gave us Resurrection F. It was okay at best, a little bland. Bringing Frieza back was utterly pointless, the new Super Saiyan forms looked awful and both of its names were stupid, and some of these problems that started in Battle of Gods got worse here. Then comes Dragon Ball Super. First we have to deal with far worse adaptations of the two new films, stretched out over multiple episodes. Yeah, let's drag Goku's 30-second first fight with Beerus into a 22-minute episode. Multiply the fight's length 44 times, that's a great idea. You'd think the extra time would have them expand on the films, but they actually left out some crucial information that was in the films in the first place. If you need to watch a 90-minute film to fully understand a 22-minute episode adaptation of said film, you've seriously fucked up. Then a bland tournament arc that wastes the majority of the cast news in it. Only one of the 5 opponents was slightly interesting to me and they still squandered that. And there was no reason for a 5-on-5 to remove one of the fights beforehand and have Vegeta fight 4 of the opposing 5. The Future Trunks arc was the best of Super to me and I enjoyed a lot of it, but the best of Super still doesn't touch the lowest points of the original run. I'll get into it later, but the main story of the Future Trunks arc would have been a lot better if there was no Future Trunks in it. But then came the Universal Survival arc, the absolute worst story Dragon Ball has ever told. It is everything I hate about modern Dragon Ball all at once. We have ridiculous new palette swap transformations, Frieza forcing yet again at the expense of other characters, shamelessly repeating moments of the original run but without the emotional impact to justify it, gotta force Broly in there too in some form, the main cast's worst traits exaggerated to truly obnoxious levels. We have some actual interesting new characters, but they get sidelined for these flaws and for the most boring antagonist in the franchise and possibly one of my least favourite characters in all of fiction. All that stretched out over a ludicrous amount of episodes, and then the ending. Look, Dragon Ball, especially towards the end, has always used the reset button in some way to undo the damage caused during the arc. But this was the only time it pissed me off, because it undid just about every moment of the arc I actually liked. But hey, the Super anime had the dignity to end right there, at least for now, and I hope it never comes back. But what about that new film that got announced just as it was ending? After the Universal Survival arc, my expectations were rock bottom. I was sure there was nothing they could announce to kill my interest even more. Then they announced Broly. Now, I already hated Broly. I hate the character himself, I hate what he represents, and I especially hate him forcing his way into every product in recent times, whether he should be in or not. All those what if forms they keep giving him in Dragon Ball Heroes all look stupid. So seeing them go for the ultimate coward move and bring Broly back yet again, especially when Toriyama said that the only reason he did it is because some executive said Broly is popular in the West, use him, made me fall out of love with the franchise for a while. To this day, I still haven't watched the new Broly film, and I will not. I also haven't followed the Super manga aside from things I've heard by accident basically, and I will not. I'm not interested in any future stories written with that film being in continuity in mind. People will say, but they made Broly more interesting in the new film, and I don't care if that's the case. The fact that they used him at all and based an entire film on we brought back a shitty film character but now he's canon, so that legitimizes him somehow, is the problem. I'm not interested in seeing a Dragon Ball written by marketing departments. I know the films were written by Toriyama and he wrote outlines for the new story arcs to be fleshed out. But Toriyama is not the same person he was from 1984 to 1995. Of course he's not going to have the same taste and mindset he did when he originally wrote Dragon Ball. And that's fine. He did his job when he wrote and drew the original series weekly for 11 years straight. We shouldn't be making him do more while pretending 2 decades haven't passed since then. Dragon Ball could only have been made by that man at that specific point in time, and people need to stop pretending otherwise. The party's over, it's just getting sad now. I'm perfectly fine with Dragon Ball surviving through video games, but these constant attempts to prop up its corpse and pretend it never ended needs to stop. I love Dragon Ball, but it needs to fuck off. Oh yeah, I'm talking about a game, aren't I? It's shit. We've got 4 buttons: punch, kick, key blast and swap between the ground and the air, which all the buttons act as dash forward and dash back. The Super Butoden series' big thing is the split screen when the 2 characters get further away from each other, with a little map at the top of the screen so you can tell the distance between them. There are special moves done with the usual Street Fighter-esque command inputs, quarter circles and all that, but they barely work. Some also use the key meter, which very slowly fills over time and when you block attacks. Some specials have a little cinematic where if you time a button pressing direction right you can either block or deflect the blast. The game barely gives any indicator of doing it right and how to get the timing, so you'll almost always take the hit. The AI will have no trouble dealing with yours though. The gameplay itself is really slow, everything's unresponsive, and even on easy difficulties, the AI is horrendous. There's also limited continuously 10 story mode battles, but you can get rid of a limit in the options menu. We start with 8 characters and I'll start with Goku and then go through the rest in story mode order. I don't have footage for most of the special moves because they just didn't work for me, which is why it looks like I'm just randomly jumping around like a jackass. Goku has a dive kick by pressing forward, down and then kick while in the air. It's the only thing I could get to reliably work. There's a quarter circle down to back and then punch for an elbow dash. The Kaioken for boosting your strength is charge down, then open the key blast button. He just flashes white instead of turning red. The homing Genki Dama is quarter circle forward and key blast. The Kamehameha is quarter circle back and then forward and key blast. Finally, the Super Genki Dama is half circle forward to back and the key blast. Is he fun to play as? No, because no one is. As for the name, I've already explained why I say Goku the way I do, but what about his Saiyan name? Normally I go with what fits the name pun best. Since it's a pun on carrot, I would normally have gone with Kakarot rather than leaving it as Kakaroto. But a certain guy called Vegito complicates that. The to at the end of Vegito comes from the end of Kakaroto, so to make the name make sense, I either have to keep the to on both so it's Kakaroto and Vegito, or drop the to on both so it's Kakarot and Vegete, and I'm not calling him Vegete. Also, Vegito's name should not be spelled with an I because there isn't an I in either character's name. Also yes, that's how I say Saiyan. Every single other dub apart from the English dubs got this right, whether they were keeping it as Saiyajin or localising it as Saiyan. Even the Japanese side considers Saiyan the English version of Saiyajin, as you can hear Vegeta sing in the song Saiyan Blood. I am the Prince of Saiyan, Saiyan Blood! The saying pronunciation is basically the equivalent of calling Ninja Gaiden Ninja Gaiden, except this one just never went away. As for Goku himself, I love that guy. He's not my favourite character, but he's probably in the top 5. He's such a fun character, especially when you start out. Like, he's so out of touch and knows nothing about the world early on. But then it turns out that Dragon Ball's Earth is so different from our own that we are on the same level of knowledge as this weird kid who eats centipedes and doesn't know that vaginas exist. And watching him progress and grow up is a joy. The fact that we start with him as a small child and then with him as a grandfather just really makes me bitter about how the modern era refuses to move forward. It's the little moments like rescuing a mouse that helped him win a fight by just shoving it in his mouth to carry it to safety. All the time he sees Murasaki hiding underwater breathing through a reed and decides the obvious solution is to boil a teapot and pour it down. You know a criticism I cannot agree with? The Goku is a terrible father / Piccolo and Vegeta are better parents opinion. All I can say is, yes, Goku was dead for a lot of his son's childhoods. But when he wasn't dead, he wasn't, say, abandoning his 4-year-old in the wilderness for 6 months. he either punched his son in the stomach because his precious pride got bruised. As for giving Cell a senzu and making Gohan fight him, for one thing, Goku realises he fucked up when Piccolo makes him see sense and he tries to correct that mistake. It's just that Cell doesn't let him. Second, it wasn't done maliciously, you can see it in his face, that's pure pride. He's so confident in Gohan's chances because he's so proud of his son. Plus his Gohan plan does get him killed, so he does get punished for it. Yeah, he left at the very end to train and live with Oob, but at that point his youngest son was 17 and he did spend the last 10 years raising him. Plus it's not like he's incapable of visiting whenever he wants. It is tough on Chi-Chi though, and I will say he's a terrible husband, but that's part of the joke where both of them are idiots. One has no idea what a relationship even is or how one functions, and one reaches insane conclusions and expects way too much based on what random magazines tell her. The reveal of Goku being a Saiyan had a great effect on his character at first, but it's become a problem later on. Finding out that not only is he from basically the most evil species in the universe, not only was he sent to the planet he saved before to wipe out all life on it, but the only reason he was sent there because despite being literally the strongest person in the world, he was considered worthless garbage compared to them. Which just makes it all the more satisfying when he works his way up enough to humiliate the arrogant guys at the top who coast by on their status and their natural talent. It's why I can never agree with the idea of Vegeta surpassing Goku permanently. If he does, it undoes that great moment where Vegeta scoffs at Goku's comment that by working hard even a lower class can match an elite, only to get humbled. They would prove that, nah, status and royal birthright and all that tops everything. Problem is later on, especially in the Super era, where we have Goku acting in very callous or brain-dead ways with the justification being, well, I'm just a battle junkie Saiyan who doesn't know any better, in a way that he never was originally. I will be fair and point out that in the Cell arc, and to a lesser extent the Buu arc, Goku did deliberately put people in danger for the sake of the fight. But when that backfired, he did at least try to stop Innocence from getting caught in his mistake. It's hypocritical, but he tried. But Super, the Universal Survival arc especially, where his actions get 7 entire universes erased, goes way too far in this and gives really weak justifications after the fact. First, it was a test to see if the victor would use their wish to bring the other universes back is really weak since it's just one quick throwaway line in the last episode that feels like it was only put in as a reaction to the criticisms of the arc. Second, from before the tournament starts, where Goku says that he never intentionally sets out to save the world or whatever, but if he sees people being put in danger he can't just ignore it. That sums up his character perfectly, and it would fit really well in the Cell and Buu arcs, but it just falls flat to me considering the stakes of the arc he actually says it in. Another issue with Goku later on is that Toriyama keeps falling into the same pattern of removing Goku early in the story arc, only to bring him back later when he's no longer relevant to the story. It's not a problem in the Saiyan and Buu arcs, but it is with the Frieza and Cell arcs. I'll ignore the Cell arc because his fight with Cell turns out to be a red herring, but when we get to him fighting Frieza, he's a little out of place because they don't really have any history or reason to know or care about each other. Until Frieza kills Kuririn, that is. Not to mention they remove him from the action due to injury twice in that arc. Let's talk about him in GT next. I'm very mixed on the decision to have Goku return to a child. On the one hand, it's refusing to let him age, which GT was actually very good with for everyone else. But it was interesting seeing a slightly more mature Goku with his child body showing how he has changed over the years, but is still the same kid from 30 years ago at heart. The big problem is that Goku stayed a child for the remainder of the series. If he was a child for the first half and the Super Saiyan 4 transformation returned him to his original body, I think that would be fine. It's just that keeping him a child goes against the theme of progression. I do like that ending though. How do you give a final ending to a character like Goku that isn't just going out in a blaze like Dragon Ball Online went with? I'd say what they went with in GT was a good idea. It's ambiguous, but it ties in with the Dragon Balls themselves, and having him appear but maybe he's not really there 100 years later. Like, he'll always be around in spirit but he's possibly not dead. There's some divinity to it with the Shenlong part, but he's not explicitly become some kind of god. I like it, and I think trying to find the exact answer to it defeats the purpose of that ending. Back to Super though. The exaggeration of his stupidity traits also got pretty annoying. Forgetting the seal for the Mafubao was an eye-roll inducing moment just to drag the arc on a little longer. But him not knowing what kissing is despite having 2 children was taking the joke of him being naive to a level where it was just unbelievable. And let's not forget the Universal Survival arc's habit of Goku being completely out of juice and unable to do anything, only to pull another powerful move out of nowhere a few episodes in a row. Which brings me to my final comment on Goku's character and my opinion on the hotly contested subject. Him being the one to defeat most of the villains. Well, the simple fact is, Goku is the main character. Of course, he is going to get the most focus. There is no Dragon Ball without Goku. Without him, there can be no story or expanding cast because it's his nature that draws all these people towards him. That's not to say putting him in the limelight hasn't caused problems at times. It certainly screwed over Gohan in the Buu arc. But the thing is, Dragon Ball was never going to end with Goku dead permanently. Gohan can't be the one to defeat the final villain because Dragon Ball is not Gohan's story. Had Toriyama not been burnt out and there was one more story arc, I'm sure Gohan would have defeated Boo and brought Goku back for good the next arc, but things just didn't turn out that way. I don't like making comparisons to Western superhero comics because Dragon Ball is not one of those, but this one works. It's like how other characters could take on the mantle of Batman or Spider-Man, but it will only be temporary and it will always revert back to Bruce Wayne and Peter Parker, because those are the guys readers came for in the first place. Last thing I want to talk about is the outfit. This game uses the iconic orange dogi in its cell arc design with the low neckline and no kanji. I like this outfit a lot and I prefer the lower neckline to the earlier versions of the outfit, but I also prefer Goku to have kanji on his shirts. It does bother me that new things keep him in this outfit. When Resurrection F gave Goku a new outfit, it was the perfect chance to bridge the gap between it and the blue outfit he wears in the final 2 chapters. But instead they chickened out and went back to this outfit with the Go kanji. It ruined the progression of him going through the kanji of his masters, to having one with his own kanji, to not feeling the need to have them anymore, to moving past the Turtle School dogi altogether. And that was a lot to say. There's probably loads more I'll be kicking myself that I forgot to include, but I will be doing more Dragon Ball games in the future, so I'll just have to bring them up there. For being such a simple character, Goku is by far the hardest one for me to talk about. The first fight in story mode is against Piccolo of the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai. Considering how often that art gets screwed out of being in games, I'm honestly surprised they included it in the first ever fighting game. Revisionist history hadn't set in yet, so Piccolo was still seen as just important a villain as Vegeta, Frieza or Cell, as he should be. Like Goku, Piccolo has a dive kick by pressing forward, down and kick while in the air. He has this amazing sliding kick that works really well in the AI by pressing forward, back, forward and kick. I-beams are done with back, forward and ki blast. A homing blast is down, forward and ki blast. His Makanko support is done with half a circle forward and ki blast. And his strongest move is the Gekiretsu Kodan, which is half circle back and ki blast. Piccolo is another favourite of mine. Maybe his death being the first thing I ever saw has something to do with it. His fight with Goku at the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai may just be my favourite fight in the series. If not, it's at least up there. There's so many back and forths that manage to keep it tense without it just being an exchange of powering up or new transformations or I was actually just hiding my full power that some later fights went into. Also the fact that both Goku and Piccolo are keeping hidden trump cards that the other had already revealed in alien matches in the tournament. Like Piccolo's clothes being revealed to be weighted after Goku's weighted clothes had already been outed in his fight with Tenshinhan, and Goku revealing that he learned to fly at the very last second after just about everyone had already showed they could do that. It's also the best fight at showing the damage these people take in the fight, especially having all of Goku's limbs broken and the hole blown through his chest just before Piccolo hits the 10 count. The Goku and Vegeta fight in the next arc is the only one that comes close to showing that level of pain. After that point is when I think the series hit the wall in terms of survivable injuries it could show, because the Frieza, Cell or Buu arcs didn't really match that level of damage in their fights. One misconception I really hate in the Western fandom is over Piccolo's demonic nature. People seem to believe that him being a demon clansman and being a Namekian are mutually exclusive, that he was a Namekian who only thought he was a demon. But no, it's clear that what they're going for with Piccolo is him being a demon was more a state of being rather than a species like, say, Dabra's species' demon. It straight up said that those who died at the hands of Piccolo and his children did not pass to the afterlife and remain stuck in a limbo. It's only after Goku and Raditz pass to the afterlife where God expresses surprise and says that Piccolo is not a demon anymore. So he was so purely evil at least 8 years before the Saiyan arc that he was demonic in nature, but in the 8 years after Goku killed him, he became at least less evil enough to no longer be one. I do feel that Piccolo does peak early as a character though. He gets that great fight in the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, and then he's at his most interesting in the Saiyan arc. I like the fact that him kidnapping Gohan isn't just some sort of self-preservation in training another strong fighter for the Saiyans, or just turning Gohan into a demon clansman to help him conquer the world, but that he just knows that he is going to die in the next year, whether through battle with the Saiyans or God's natural life coming to an end, and he wants to leave some kind of legacy behind. And of course it's coming to care for that legacy that causes him to give his life in the end. Later arcs don't really give him anything on that level. His presence in the Frieza arc was utterly pointless, and even bringing him there to begin with was a brain-dead stupid move. Him fusing with Nail meant nothing. Nail himself is a nothing character that only exists to give Piccolo a power-up that also amounted to nothing. The Cell arc is a little better, but not by much. It gets some nice moments fighting number 20 and also fucking up by tipping off Cell about his own regeneration. But what should have been his big moment, reuniting with God, falls flat. Like Nail, he just ends up being another stat boost to Piccolo and he's just gone. A stat boost rendered obsolete almost immediately, by the way. I think Toriyama realised he just liked Dende more than God and decided to write him out to justify writing Dende back in. The anime did give Piccolo that scene of attacking Cell from behind, trying to help Gohan in any way despite how outmatched he is, and inspiring the rest to join in. That was nice, and even though it amounts to nothing, I find it more satisfying than just Vegeta interfering in the end. Piccolo in the Buu arc I quite enjoy. Seeing this serious guy being made to babysit for the purely chaotic Trunks and Goten was a lot of fun. There's some great faces from him in that arc. The anime version of that arc had a scene of him horrified after he sells out the rest of all life on Earth to Buu, hoping to get a few extra hours to train the kids, but only gets a few seconds when Buu wipes out everyone right there. After quite a few moments earlier in the arc when people callously say, "Oh, we'll just revive everyone who died with the Dragon Balls," it's nice to see someone actually feel the weight of that decision when it actually happens. Piccolo's role in GT, I actually like. It's not without fault though. That they kill him off in episode 39, which was only the second episode he appeared in, was a problem. But also that his final talk with Gohan was actually the first and only time those two ever talked in GT. Before that, Piccolo only spoke to Gohan while Baby was hijacking his body. Despite that, the music in the scene and the image of Piccolo standing on the exploding Earth as the last living creature on it was quite an effective image. Him rioting on Heaven to get himself sent to Hell in the Super No. 17 arc was one of the few things I liked about that arc. While you could say that Enma should have figured out that Piccolo tricked him into sending him to Hell to help Goku after the fact and could easily send him back to Heaven, I really like that a guy who used to call himself the Great Demon King now spends his afterlife roaming Hell and beating up the most evil people in history for fun. Plus, I just like that GT actually had the guts to give a permanent ending to a beloved long-running character. Even if it was possible without causing a plot hole, do you really think Super would have the confidence to do that? Speaking of Piccolo in Super, I was going to say that I don't have any complaints about Piccolo in Super. Yeah, he gets a better showing in the God of Destruction Champa arc, but that whole thing is more an issue I have with Vegeta than with Piccolo. That Gohan has a man who was once called God as his daughter's unpaid live-in babysitter is always amusing to me. The scene where he lectures Chi-Chi and Goku over exactly how to look after their own granddaughter is maybe an obvious joke to make, but I liked it. But then I remembered the Resurrection F arc, where they pointlessly killed Piccolo in a way to evoke his first death from Nappa, but it's out of nowhere and lacks any of the emotion and build-up. Even the revival is off-screen. Fuck that decision. Just another lazy attempt to say, remember the early 90s, rather than make something with actual meaning. But that's the only issue I have with Piccolo in Super. As for his costume, Piccolo only changes clothes once. He swaps a round neck on his shirt for a plunging neckline, which is what he has in this game. I prefer this design, but in general I prefer Piccolo's design when he's wearing the weights. Now I debated on whether to talk about Piccolo Daimao here, since they essentially are the same person. But he's also different enough and a separate entity in most games, so I'll wait until I play a game that has that incarnation of Piccolo. Defeating Piccolo moves me on to Vegeta. And find Vegeta in story mode, I can choose between Goku and Piccolo, despite Piccolo being dead at this point. If you didn't set unlimited continues, you lose one when all your available characters have been killed. Down back, then up forward and kick will have him do a handspring attack. Quarter circle forward kick will make him do a sliding kick. Forward, back, forward and punch performs a punching combo that is a godsend against this game's AI. Quarter circle back and punch is a headbutt attack. Quarter circle forward and ki blast has him fire multiple blasts. Half circle forward and ki blast is the big bang attack, and quarter circle back then forward and ki blast is the final flash. Vegeta is a character I have mixed feelings on, and in general I don't gel with the general fandom's opinion of him. When I like him, I enjoy him a lot. When I don't, I can't stand his presence. I couldn't decide for the longest time how to go about talking about him, but in the end I decided just going in order was the best way. Vegeta makes an effective villain in the Saiyan arc. That we watch Nappa tear through most of the heroes without seeing Vegeta do anything, and Nappa seems terrified of pissing Vegeta off, was a good way to build him up. And the fight between him and Goku is another of the series' best. It's not got the bloodiness of the Goku vs Piccolo fight, but it does just as good a job at showing both sides wearing each other down and showing the damage they're doing to each other. It has some of the most painful looking hits in the series. My only issue with this fight is later media latching themselves onto this scene and not letting go. Almost every video game announced since 2008 has to have the first screenshot be Goku and Vegeta fighting in the mountains, and it's making me tired of a part of the series that I really like. Despite that, there's not much else to say about him in that arc. It's the next arc where he really shines. Vegeta in the Frieza arc is Vegeta at his absolute best. It's already tense enough having the hero sneaking around under Frieza's forces' noses, completely outclassed and needing every small victory they can get. But then you add Vegeta as a chaotic third faction, working his way up through Frieza's best while still being just as much a threat to Gohan and Kuririn. And his one setback he manages to turn to his advantage, so that before the Ginyus turn up, he's the one who gets closest to winning. And even in his teaming up with the heroes, it's clear it's just self-preservation and he will screw them over if it'll help him out. And his death at Frieza's hands is one of my favourite deaths in the series. It's so brutal and it's just so pathetic seeing him reduced to tears because he can't win and giving up, even when those he looked down on for being weak gave a better showing. You can't help but feel bad for him in that moment. But at the same time, everything that happened to Vegeta there, he brought on himself. He was in no way like the innocent Namekians that were killed, he was no better than Frieza. What he got from Frieza was what he'd been doing all his life, willingly and happily. Remember, Vegeta only hated being under Frieza. The actual job of going planet to planet and murdering people, he loved. He even admitted himself that he didn't care about the science Frieza killed, he just hated that even with his highborn status, he had to be Frieza's lackey. He himself indulged in the same shit Frieza was doing in that very arc, wiping out peaceful villagers including the children and gloating about it later. Hell, Frieza killing a guy who openly conspired to betray him isn't much worse than Vegeta murdering his own subordinate for simply being injured. And of course, it's followed by him tearfully begging the one guy who shut down his entire worldview of birthright and status equals strength to achieve his goal for him. It's why I love that when he dies, Goku is sympathetic, but he doesn't excuse Vegeta's actions. He pretty much says, "I hated you, but I get it." And to be honest, I always felt it was a shame he had to be revived after that because that was such a good ending to his character. But then again, if he stays dead we don't get Trunks, so he's another character I enjoy. However, I don't think Vegeta ever reaches those heights as a character again. His role in the Cell arc is my least favourite usage of him in the original run. This is the beginning of "I will surpass you, Kakaroto," and I find that aspect of Vegeta dull, overdone, and obnoxious. In general, I didn't like a lot of the rival characters in the shonen anime I caught as a kid. Gary from Pokemon, Matt from Digimon, Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh! I just found them unlikable, argumentative, some of them arrogant pricks. Vegeta avoided that during the Saiyan and Frieza arcs, but fell right into that territory starting with the Cell arc. His betrayal by helping Cell achieve his perfect form is in character, but the issue is that he never faces true repercussions for it. No one calls him out on it. Yes, he gets his ass beaten, and it is both amazing and absolutely deserved. The beating he gets from number 18 for his arrogance is also a fun one, but that's not really a proper punishment when the others get their heads kicked in too without deserving it. The relationship between Vegeta and future Trunks is interesting, but it doesn't do much for me. Vegeta is just an arsehole and sinks the entire "Vegeta is a better father than Goku" argument in one action. His reaction to Trunks' death never felt that genuine to me either. It didn't come across as "you killed my son" to me. It felt more like, "that guy came from my balls, so he's my property, you broke my thing." He does at least apologise to Gohan for fucking everything up and is instrumental in Gohan finishing Cell, so there's some minor redemption there, but not enough in my eyes. Then the Buu arc repeats the plot point of Vegeta betraying everyone. This one is actually worse in my eyes because it's framed by the series and fans as this incredibly cool or badass thing, but it's just a midlife crisis piss baby temper tantrum that results in the deaths of literally everyone and the destruction of Earth. People tried to pass the blame to Kaioshin for his plan failing, but the fault is entirely on Vegeta because if he didn't throw a shit fit, Kaioshin's plan would have succeeded. Never mind the people he blew away to goad Goku into a fight with him, said blast being mere feet away from killing his own wife. The fight wasn't worth it, by the way. In the manga it's a total waste, and even the expanded version of the anime I still find dull. The only good thing to come of it was his death scene. Him finally showing some actual affection for his son and willingly giving up his life, knowing that he'll be going to hell and reincarnated for what he's done all his life, would have been a very satisfying ending to his character. Once again, it's kind of a shame he had to come back. Especially for me because at this point in my eyes, he didn't deserve any further redemption. Side note, Vegeta first held Trunks at 8 years old despite being around Trunks his entire life. Goku was dead the first 7 years of Goten's life and still held him before Vegeta held Trunks, seconds after meeting him in fact. Better father my arse. But of course, Vegeta came back, and for the rest of the arc he did have some good moments. Finally swallowing his pride and fusing with Goku, working out the plan to revive everyone and finish Buu, and finally admitting Goku is number 1. I still don't think it's quite enough for Porunga to consider him a good enough person to revive though. It feels more like guy who lived his life being utterly despicable and monstrous but realises, oh shit, I don't want to go to hell when I die, and puts some token half-hearted attempt at being a good person. Despite that, I do feel like the series ends him on a good enough note, wrapping up most of his recurring subplots and setting him up for a new chapter in his life. But they just couldn't leave well enough alone, could they? The problem started with the redone manga ending in the Kanzenban release that crowbars in one final panel of Vegeta being all, I will defeat you, yeah again. The issue is, Vegeta cannot progress because revisionist history has decided that the rivalry is the entire point of Vegeta's character and that he can't function without it, so he has to be dragged back in again and again. I'm going to hold off on GT for now and go straight to the Super era. Vegeta was quite good in Battle of Gods, which is the most recent thing I liked him in. Like Piccolo, he works really well when used for comedy. So those moments of him trying to placate Beerus without giving away his status were a lot of fun. Also the My Bulma scene. It's funny, this is one of the few scenes where Vegeta is an actual likeable person. but people take issue with it because of the power scaling. Vegeta should not be able to hurt Beerus because whatever. And this is why I just do not respect that section of the fandom. That they see actual character development but decide that, no, my made up calculations of imaginary numbers do not support this character development. I should say that I'm only praising the film version of that scene. The Super version once again stretches it out and creates possibly the most embarrassing scene I've ever watched in the franchise. After Battle of Gods is where we get my biggest complaint of not just Vegeta, but the writing in general for the modern era. The Goku and Vegeta rivalry dynamic dominates fucking everything. No other characters can get a look in because everything has to be about Vegeta's obsession. For a plotline that was wrapped up in the mid-90s, it sure won't fuck off. If you reread the original series, Goku himself didn't really give a shit about the rivalry. The very first time Vegeta throws his patented I will defeat you and storm off maneuver, Goku's response is just, whatever. But today we just had them pretend that, nah, Goku was always obsessing over what Vegeta was doing to train and the like, and I hate it. There's really nothing to say about him in Resurrection F. I'm not one of his cheerleaders, so I don't care that he got to beat up Frieza, nor does it bother me that the main character got the kill. It did bother me that it was just another film where him and Goku are the only ones that matter. The God of Destruction Champa arc is when that really got on my tits. You build an interesting team with a new character, one that's dropped off a little recently, and one that never really had a chance to shine fighting as a hero, except for a very short bit in GT, and then had that first one be a red herring, the second amount to nothing, and the third removed before the fighting even starts, just to have Vegeta fight 4 of the other team's 5 fighters, and people still behave as if he's getting shortchanged. In the Future Trunks arc there's not much to say about him. It also doesn't bother me that he doesn't get that much done against Zamasu or Black. You could certainly say that being Trunks' father makes him integral to that story, but as I said earlier, that arc and the idea behind it would be better off without forcing Future Trunks in it. That arc is neither Trunks' or Vegeta's story, so I don't mind him not taking centre stage. Once again though, Goku and Vegeta are the only ones allowed to have relevance aside from Trunks here. When it's the two of them, it stands out more to me than when it's just Goku. Maybe because Goku is the main character, so of course he'd be relevant, but there's no reason to only have Vegeta for him to bounce off of. But the Universal Survival arc is where my annoyance with modern Vegeta hit a fever pitch. The big thing that really pissed me off is how they wrote his attitude. So many episodes in a row in that shitty arc where I had to hear, hey Vegeta, something's coming your way, better dodge. Don't tell me what to do. Yo Vegeta, that guy's gonna sneak attack you, be careful. I don't take orders from you. Vegeta, your bowels have prolapsed violently and are dragging you along the floor behind you. You should probably get that checked out. No one tells Vegeta what to do. I got very sick of it. I do not care for the Universe 6 Saiyan planet or the idea of Vegeta visiting because it's not fucking interesting, so his whole thing with Cabba I just didn't care for. Then, I already hated Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan, but then they go and give Vegeta an unexplained Super Saiyan slightly different shade of blue. I honestly feel it was just included because of Ultra Instinct, to placate the kind of fan who complains when the main character makes progress and demands Vegeta always get something to compensate. But then the big one, Toppo, the only character I truly found interesting in that arc. He got completely thrown under the bus just so that they could repeat Vegeta's death scene from the Buu arc, but since he's not dying and just winning a fight, he has nowhere near the kind of impact they were aiming for. It was the biggest fucking new story let us remind you of the 90s they ever did, and it pissed me off so much. Vegeta is not the main character of Dragon Ball, it's not his story. He's very popular, yes, but that is not a reason to screw over every other character to keep his fans happy. People complain about Goku taking the spotlight, but it's not Goku who's taking the focus away from the rest of the cast today, it's Vegeta. Because they always have to dedicate time to their tired rivalry, because it's marketable and people can't move past 1994. And all that is why I quite enjoy Vegeta in Dragon Ball GT. Vegeta shows far more progression in his few non-body snatched appearances than he does in the entire Super era. For one, the endless I must defeat Kakaroto is toned way the fuck down. He's still competitive with Goku, but he actually has a life now. The tired, he's a bastard to everyone but might once in a blue moon show affection for his family so that means he's totally a good guy all the time is gone. He's a hard ass, but he's grown enough emotionally that he can be completely destroyed when his daughter doesn't like his moustache. He'll actually smirk when his wife compliments him after shaving. He's an actual person now instead of the shouting dispenser he is through the Super era and most of the original films. He's even allowed to fully admit out loud that Earth is now his home. Him being the one left in charge of protecting Earth actually feels earned here. Now, I've probably pissed a lot of people off with this section, but I'm aware what I have to say is unpopular, and I stand by it. And I will not do that pathetic fucking thing other YouTubers do when they give their supposed unpopular opinions where they go all, oh, I'm gonna get a lot of hate over this, or please don't hurt me for saying this. I hate when people try to turn simple unpopular opinions on media into a weird victimhood thing to set up their viewers to respond with, no, you're the best, everyone else is just sheep for having a popular opinion. I hate it. The point I want to make is I don't hate Vegeta or even dislike him. I wouldn't have given praise if I did. Those parts of him I praised I really like. It's just that like a lot of characters, I dislike his handling in modern media. But he gets it worse from me because he is omnipresent in modern Dragon Ball, so there's more opportunities for him to annoy me than most other characters have. Plus, it's just the case that what I dislike about his modern incarnation feeds into what I don't like about how he's portrayed in the Cell and Buu arcs in a way that it doesn't with a lot of others. Vegeta's part of this video took me the longest to write because he has such a protective fanbase that I felt I had to cover everything I could think of. But if you're one of the dedicated Vegeta fans and this did piss you off, then sorry, but I just don't share your tastes. Also, a quick thing. I get Vegeta being someone's favourite character. I get loving watching him and just being entertained by his personality. There's a reason characters like him are always popular. But those who see him as an idol, someone to aspire to be, essentially the bright rich kid who whines when he doesn't get his way because he thinks his status entitles him to what he wants, that I don't get. As for his costume, this game uses his battle jacket from the Cell arc. This is my least favourite look for him and it truly annoys me that they keep coming back to this outfit. There was this nice progression of Vegeta's design, starting off fully ornate with all the pads, then slowly dropping them until it's just the important parts. Then comes this outfit which is a new design from Bulma, but still has the inspiration from Frieza's army. Then it's just the boots and gloves with some blue spandex, followed by him just wearing regular ass clothes. Even if it wasn't intentional, it worked very well and they should have stuck to that instead of going, but iconic, and moving backwards. It especially annoyed me when in the 2008 special he says that it's Saiyan formal wear. No it's not, your wife made that. It's weird though, because I only hate this outfit on Vegeta. I quite like it when Trunks, Goku and Gohan are wearing it. I think it's because I just like his earlier ones more, and this one seems more bland in comparison, so it always baffles me that they chose to stick with this one. Well, that's enough about Vegeta. I finish him off with Piccolo. Who's next to talk about? Oh, fucking hell. I hope you love hearing a 28-year-old man bitch about a 36-year-old Japanese children's comic because you're gonna get even more soon. First thing to bring up is that Vegeta is in my available party for this fight, despite being dead like Piccolo in the last fight, and Goku has been swapped out for his Super Saiyan version. I'll get to that later, because Frieza is next. Frieza has two spinning moves that attack with his tail, a vertical one with down back, up forward and punch, and a horizontal one with quarter circle back, forward and kick. I hate these moves because the AI can use them perfectly to utterly destroy you. He has a dashing elbow with quarter circle back and punch, his death beam is done with charge back, forward and ki blast, his invisible kinetic attack with great range, with quarter circle forward and ki blast. His own version of the Kienzan is done with half circle forward and ki blast. Finally, his death ball is performed with half circle back and ki blast. An interesting thing you'll notice about Frieza in this game is that he only appears in his 100% bulked up state. This is the only game where this is the only version of Frieza, as all others include his regular true form by default with the possibility of some other forms appearing. It makes sense. The franchise was still ongoing, and what people decided in retrospect was the iconic and marketable aspects hadn't been set in stone yet, so why wouldn't they choose Frieza's strongest form if they could only fit one version of him? Frieza himself is the biggest outlier in this game's cast. The roster of this game is almost entirely Cell arc based, which makes sense as it was the current arc at the time. His usage as a red herring to kick off the arc aside, Frieza is the only character from outside the arc to be playable in this game. He was very popular, even 2 years after his arc had ended, so it just made sense to squeeze him in there. So despite me warning about upcoming complaints, I really like Frieza in the original series. His one action in killing Cargo aside, he manages to be so menacing despite just being a little pink guy in a hover chair who spends the longest time not doing much and letting his lackeys do the fighting. He's based on real estate speculators, so he has this amazing way of talking to people where he's overly polite but with a thinly veiled smugness, that he knows there's nothing anyone can do to him and he's just humouring himself. I even managed to like all his forms in different ways. He's probably the best example of Toriyama's trend of a villain being their most dangerous at their least threatening looking. We get 3 prior forms with horns and increasing size and monstrousness, all to top it with a simple, smooth, sleek look with all the frills dropped. I'll talk about his other forms properly when I play a game they appear in. What I like about his 100% state is that unlike his other transformations, it's not a total flip of I'm the stronger, now I'm the stronger. It elongates the fight, but it's made clear that Goku is still superior and Frieza is just delaying the inevitable. It's also one of the few bulked out forms that doesn't make the user look dumb. That whole part is also a good usage of his inability to sense ki or even control his own properly. At the beginning of the arc he dominates because he has the numbers, his own strength and the scouts to get what he wants. Both the heroes and Vegeta manage to get around under his nose once the scouters are gone because they have that ability to control ki and feel their way around, and that's what lets these weaker fighters slowly get the advantage. Of course when Frieza himself starts fighting, he can't be matched. But when he's finally surpassed by Goku as a Super Saiyan, He's incapable of realising he's outmatched even at full strength. He can't even feel ki enough to realise he's hemorrhaging his own. But it's why I'm not a fan of Frieza counting up the percentage of his own ki while powering up to that state. He shouldn't have the control to be able to know what percentage he's at, unless it's just posturing. His complete humiliation by Goku is probably the most satisfying in the entire series. Vegeta reduced to barely being able to crawl towards his pod was a good one, but Frieza just being a torso, head and arm, begging for help and still trying to take that chance to get the last word in, only to get blown away, is really good. That fight was too long in the anime though. In the manga it's perfectly fine. I can't imagine being one of the original viewers in Japan when episodes were weekly. 10 weeks for the 5-minute fight before Namek explodes. We had a new episode a weekday in the UK, and the 2 weeks it took to air that section feel much longer. While I'm not a huge fan of the Garlic Jr. filler arc, its placement was a good breather at the time between Frieza appearances. Me, my parents and my brother all watched the show through the Frieza arc, and we were getting a little fed up of bland exploding Namek where everything looks the same. I remember when the next episode preview showed Mecha Frieza. My mum almost gave up on the show right there because she was just burnt out on him even after 2 weeks of Garlic Jr. Imagine if, like in the manga, he was back the very next episode. I might have given up too. But of course it turned out to be a red herring to kick off the Cell arc. And it was the best usage of Frieza outside his own arc, used to show the stakes of the next arc by having a guy who can kill him no problem, so even he can't deal with the new threat. A stepping stone on the hero's constant progression, and that was where he should have stayed. Remember, the claim that Toriyama planned to end at Frieza is untrue. There was no grand plan with Goku's Saiyan origins and Frieza being the ultimate endpoint because none of that was thought of back then. Goku's Saiyan origins weren't planned out, Toriyama just came up with the idea 6 story arcs in, because very little of Dragon Ball was ever planned more than 3 or so weeks ahead. I can assure you that when Raditz showed up to drop the biggest plot twist in the series, Frieza was not even a sperm in Toriyama's brain's balls yet. My huge issue with Frieza is that they will not knock it off with bringing him back. Ignoring the Mecha Frieza stuff because that was purely a red herring to set up the next arc, we first had that filler episode in the anime with Goku and Paikuhan fighting him and a few other dead villains in Hell. I don't mind it, it's harmless. Then we get his cameo in DBZ Movie 12 as one of the many escaped souls from Hell, where he gets to talk shit only for Gohan to kill him again with a single punch. I like this one. His appearance doesn't overshadow the main plot and it's a nice showing of how far Gohan has come over a decade later. Then they do it again in GT with another Hell escape in the Super No. 17 arc, only this time it's Goku facing him while teamed up with Cell. Movie 12 did it better because it dedicated just the right amount of time to it rather than stretching it over 2 episodes. I also don't like teaming him and Cell up because it just feels really forced. I seriously doubt these two would actually get along. Frieza wouldn't be able to stand the idea of this guy just naturally being more powerful than him, partially by being made out of bits of Frieza's DNA, and Cell would most likely just see Frieza as beneath him and not worth humouring. And of course at this point I shouldn't leave out that we also had 2 films starring a less interesting clone of Frieza, and he got used as a big set piece in many plans to eradicate Saiyans. But apart from that, during the original run, Frieza was treated as no more important than any other villain, because he wasn't. He was popular, but he was just simply the villain of story arc 8 out of 10. Games and promotional artwork also made sure not to elevate him. See this screenshot from The Great Legend of Son Goku on the PC Engine, which gives all villains before Cell, who was the final boss, equal treatment. All this amazing artwork from the late Cell arc by Toriyama himself. They skip Vegeta, but the 3 villains here all have equal space dedicated to them. The problem started with the 2008 special, as almost everything released starting with it had to tie itself to Frieza in some way. First, that special is based around a couple leftovers from his army showing up and picking a fight. Then episode of Bardock gives us yet another Frieza clone just so Bardock can have a vicarious victory over Frieza and completely miss the point of Bardock as a character. In Battle of Gods, I'm fine with Beerus being aware of Frieza and just letting him run around doing his stuff. But I hate that Frieza now knew of Beerus all along. The breakdown of the guy who genuinely believes himself to be unsurpassed in the entire universe because he was defeated for the first time by literal garbage in his eyes is completely diminished when you reveal that Frieza was always aware of and had even met someone so far above him that they could erase his existence on a whim. It's my least favourite case of Beerus being retroactively added into every single bit of backstory. I feel the same way about him knowing of Majin Buu in F. Cold somehow knowing of Buu makes him slightly more interesting, but once again Frieza should not be aware of people more powerful than him before he fights Goku. Then came Dragon Ball Minus, which also decided to force in a reference to Frieza knowing of Super Saiyan God, despite never coming up once from him before, just because that form was the new hotness at the time. It's here I'd like to remind people that Frieza was not afraid of a Super Saiyan appearing. At no point is that said in the original run. He was afraid of the Saiyan's growing strength in general and the idea that they might all team up on him. Of course, next is Resurrection F, his big return, and it's weak. The worst wish in history, and it turns out to just be bringing back an old overused villain. The idea of Frieza training for the first time in his life means nothing because all it accomplishes is him being able to punch harder in a much less impressive showing than his original fight in the manga. Golden Frieza I'm mixed on the look of. I think they made his face too purple, and most of the time the franchise's cheap production value makes the gold look tacky. What I do like though is that the previous film has Goku have a transformation that's closer to what the villains have, smaller and less threatening looking. Then, the very next film has Frieza use the hero method of turning gold. Shame that was the film where they dumped Super Saiyan God for the shitty blue one. His blowing up of the planet when he lost falls completely flat for me in that film. Bulma is the only one to recognise that everyone is dead. The rest just look at the floating chunks of their home, with the knowledge that everyone and everything they know has perished in the ball of fire and are just, oh no, we lost Vegeta, what a bummer. This is one of the very few improvements Super had in the film adaptation arcs. Frieza's destruction of Earth there is the best depiction of the Earth's destruction in the franchise. It's not an empty planet with a few unconscious stragglers or just Piccolo staying behind like in the Buu arc or GT. And it doesn't ignore that people other than Vegeta died in that explosion. We actually see other characters just going about their day, not knowing there's even anything bad going on before they get engulfed. And we get to see Gohan and Kuririn hit with the realization that their wives and children are dead. We even get music from Sumitomo that isn't utterly forgettable for once. See, I can be positive about Super sometimes. Of course, both versions have the same issue in that Beerus and Whis just hanging around and watching remove any tension since they can put a stop to it all whenever they want. Then we get the God of Destruction Champa arc, where we get yet another Frieza clone. Only his thing is that it looks like he's not like Frieza at first, only for it to turn out that he's just like Frieza. Total waste. Like Chilled, Frost only exists to give Vegeta a vicarious win over Frieza to please those who complained about him not getting the kill last time. The Future Trunks arc is the first new story since GT's Evil Dragons arc in 1997, 19 years earlier, that doesn't tie itself to Frieza. Sort of. Yi Shinlong was created by the wish to revive those killed by Frieza and his men, but all the dragons are made from past wishes, and I think this is one of the few that isn't said out loud in the series itself, only in guidebooks. But yeah, first in 2 decades to not try and force a Frieza connection. Maybe that's why it's the best Super arc despite its flaws. But then, of course, I get the shit on the Universal Survival arc again. I'll start with the good. Frieza does have some entertaining moments during the arc. That's all. Now for the rest. It was bad enough that they were bringing Frieza back yet again. Thanks to the movie recap arcs, this was the 3rd time seeing him in the space of 2 years. But that they removed Buu yet again, the 3rd time in a row, using the same never mentioned before 2014 hibernation excuse as the previous 2 times really pissed me off. Once again, a character with possibly the biggest and most creative skill set for a huge battle royale got swapped out yet again for the most cowardly option possible. Frieza has no remaining worth as a character in my eyes. His effectiveness is completely gone thanks to unoriginality, overuse, putting the need to remind people of my childhood before the need to tell a good story, and marketing departments deciding 2 decades after the fact that he was the only villain who mattered. And I know they left him still alive at the end of that fucking Broly film. So great, he's literally a shitty Saturday morning cartoon villain flying off into the distance going, "I'll get you next time, Saiyaman." What was one of the franchise's best characters is now one of the biggest symbols of its declining quality and creativity and its total cowardice. Thanks, Shueisha. I'm glad I quit the revival era when I did. Well, that was long and bitchy, so let's move on to a character I have less to say about. Piccolo's dashing kick gets me past Frieza and onto Artificial Human number 20. I'd like to point out here that Vegeta has also been swapped out for his Super Saiyan version, but once again I'll save that for later. First off, why Artificial Human? Wouldn't Cyborg or Android be just as valid for Jinzo Ningen? Well, yeah, but there's 2 reasons I go with the more literal translation. The first is that Jinzo Ningen is used as an all-encompassing term, but not all of them are cyborgs and not all are androids. Number 8, number 17, number 18 and number 20 are all cyborgs, originally human but enhanced with machinery. Number 16 and number 19 are the only androids, being entirely man-made machines. Plus Cell is clearly neither of those. Second is that when the very first Artificial Human is introduced, number 8, Goku gives him the short nicknamed Hachan because he struggles to say the term Jinzo Ningen. Now, Goku isn't the smartest, but he's not a complete slobbering idiot who struggles with 2-syllable words, but it makes sense that he'd struggle with the 3 times as long Artificial Human. As for his real name, Dr. Gero, that's just how it's said. I do find it interesting that both English dubs at the time got the pronunciation wrong, but still said it different from each other. Gero from Funimation in-house and Jaro from the Westwood/Ocean dub. Getting primarily Ocean Studios dubbed episodes but in-house Funimation dubbed video games around the same time was very confusing. What the fuck is an Omega Shenron? I can literally watch GT on TV right now and hear him called E Shenron. But anyway, his moves. A jumping headbutt with down back up forward and punch, Vegeta's backstep and headbutt with quarter circle back and punch, an uppercut combo with quarter circle forward and punch, I-beams with quarter circle forward and key blast, a key absorbing grab with half circle back and key blast, and a general big blast with half circle forward and key blast. When it comes to the artificial humans, my experience goes like this. The newest batch of new episodes airing in the UK at the time stopped at the episode where Trunks gives his warning to Goku and returns to the future. So we had to wait for more new episodes before we could even see the artificial humans. After so long with just reruns of Saiyan to third form Frieza, then the long Frieza fight, getting teased with the first truly new antagonist in ages, and then running out of new episodes right there made it a very long wait. Like many people, I was not expecting an old man and fat mime. I didn't have any expectations though, to be honest. I was either 7 or 8 by the time they finally showed up. It's not like the few people my age at school who also watched the show were into speculation or anything. We were all along for the ride. Although here is an anecdote relating to that for you, before I forget. We did have the odd moment where a kid claims to know exactly what was coming up in a popular show, or says they've seen the big new thing and has outlandish claims about what happens in it. A popular example at my school was people claiming to have seen Pokemon the movie 2000 before anyone else and claiming Ash catches a Mew in it, that sort of thing. That almost never happened with Dragon Ball, except for one time when a friend claimed he'd seen the end of the Cell game and that Vegeta wins by pulling one of the corners of the ring out and just hitting Cell with it. He said this the day after the episode where Cell obliterated the ring and all the corners with it aired over here. We were gullible kids back then and believed anything, me especially. I'm still waiting for my King Cold spaceship capsule for Frieza in the first Budokai game. Superjeets.com wouldn't lie to me in 2003. But even I know that was total bollocks and a complete anticlimax. Okay, tangent over, back to number 20. I do appreciate how unexpected their designs are following a string of villains designed to be cool. The idea of the villain who has no ki to sense and powers himself by absorbing others' ki is a cool idea. The last arc had the hero saved by the ability to sense ki, and now it does nothing to help them. He is dumped pretty quick though for the next 3 artificial humans. It's well known at this point that Toriyama's first editor, Kazuhiko Torishima, called him to complain about the new villains being a fatso and a geezer, and those complaints prompted Toriyama to abandon number 19 and number 20 for new artificial humans. The way the villains are swapped out is pretty seamless though, and you'd never guess it wasn't planned. Well, except for the original printings of the manga chapter having Trunks explicitly named number 19 and number 20 as the ones ravaging his future. But apart from that, having one of the big bad artificial humans defeated surprisingly quickly, only for Trunks to return and be, "Who the hell are these guys? These aren't what I warned you about," works really well. Having him still be a threat despite fleeing and being outclassed by Vegeta and Piccolo, only to be effortlessly killed by the next artificial humans, does a good job of building them up without diminishing number 20. Although, I can't help but wonder about this alternate timeline arc where these two were the main villains. All these games about time travel and with loads of what if scenarios and none of them have tried this one? Do we need to see what if Bardock was bestest a million times while an actual storyline that almost happened gets ignored? Number 20 has been used again a couple times after his death. First, a more gruesome version of his death was shown in DBZ Movie 7, then he returns as one of the 2 villains who kick off the Super number 17 arc in GT. I don't have too much to say about him here. Most of my criticisms of the arc are more fitting to be talked about with other characters who aren't in this game. He's not used that great though. Since he's the first one to be betrayed by Super number 17 and Dr. Mew, it just feels like a repeat of his role in the Cell arc. Create the villain, get betrayed by the villain, and left as a talking head on the floor before being killed. It's even the same villain who does it. That would be it, since he hasn't appeared in the modern era yet. But there was that interview with Toriyama back in 2014 that decided to give him a little backstory. First there's number 16 stuff, but I'll save that for when I get to him later in this video. I hate that Toriyama decided Dr. Gero was a secret leader and founding member of the Red Ribbon Army even above Commander Red. It does absolutely nothing for Gero and damages Red. Not to mention, the idea that this guy spent a decade and a half perfecting these killer machines to get revenge on Goku for ruining the glorious Red Ribbon dream, unaware that the true purpose of the army all along was for Red to use the Dragon Balls to simply get taller, and no one knows because the only 2 people who ever knew died without spreading that information, is just funny. That retcon is wank. Once again, Piccolo kicks my way to victory, letting me move on to the next fight against artificial human number 18. She has a jumping knee with down, back, up, forward and kick. She has an art attack for some reason with down, back, up and kick, a sliding kick with quarter circle forward and kick, an elbow dash with quarter circle back and punch, an uppercut combo with quarter circle forward and punch, a homing blast with quarter circle forward and ki blast, a ki blast that travels along the floor with quarter circle back to down and ki blast, and finally a strong beam with quarter circle back, forward and ki blast. Number 18 is the only female fighter in this game and many other Dragon Ball games. There aren't that many options really, especially at this point in the franchise. Videl and Zangief wouldn't exist for a few months yet, Chi-Chi can't fly, and one scene in DBZ Movie 4 aside, hadn't been portrayed in a fighting role for about 5 years. Apart from them there's Lan Fan, who also can't fly, whose only special technique was stripping and is so minor and not in demand she has to this day never been playable. And lastly there's minor filler character Anine, who is even more obscure and has appeared in even less video games than Landman, none of them playable. Okay, doing a quick look up, both of them are obtainable characters in Dokkan Battle, but I can't really count that in the same way I don't really count heroes. You're not really playing as the character in those games. Number 18 is my favourite of the second wave of artificial humans. That she actually got to stick around and be semi-important after the Cell arc helps a lot too. I enjoyed the fight with Vegeta a lot, but after that their little road trip to Goku's house I was never too bothered by. She also doesn't really get much to do when Cell shows up either other than sow the seeds for her and Kuririn's relationship. I didn't know whether to talk about that whole subject here, but I've decided to hold off on it for when I get to a game where Kuririn is playable, because the debates around that moment are more to do with his actions. I don't know why I'm being coy about a game where X is playable when I've already made it clear in 2 previous videos that a Dragon Ball Z Budokai video will be coming in the future. It's the Buu arc that really made me like this character, and it's why despite my many complaints with that arc, I cannot agree with Dragon Ball ending at Cell. There's just too much good stuff after him that we'd lose. Her entire role at the 25th Tenkaichi Budokai is gold. Being the one to start off the punch machine sequence, figuring out Goten and Trunks are in disguise as Mighty Mask and simply destroying their disguise to get them disqualified. But her fight with Mr. Satan is the best. Blackmailing him for double the tournament's prize money in exchange for not annihilating his image, and just casually telling him that she'll be over for the money in the morning and if he doesn't hand it over, she'll kill him. It's a minor role, but it's a better showing than many longer running characters got in that arc. In GT, she also gets to be one of the few bright spots in the Super Number 17 arc. Her reaction to Kuririn's death was quite effective and brilliantly acted by Miki Ito. She does rage-filled screaming very well. It's actually very rare in Dragon Ball for someone to show that level of affection towards their spouse. She's taken out of the action after that but gets to show up at the end of the arc and be instrumental in Super Number 17's death. Yes, Goku got the death blow, but it's her interference that let him. Shame she's done after that. After Goku sets off to collect the Dragon Balls, she's gone for the rest of the series aside from reused footage for the final flashback. She's not even there when we see Kuririn after he's finally revived, and that's a shame. As for the Super era, she's basically a glorified cameo in Battle of Gods, so we'll move on to F. This was not a popular decision back then. Number 18 is told by Kuririn to stay behind and watch their daughter while he, the weaker of the two, goes off to fight Frieza's army. Yeah, it's crappy. I get that Toriyama wanted a smaller cast than just piling everyone in at once, but to be honest, I feel that number 18 is the one character whose absence from that fight didn't need a scene to justify it. She's not one to actively get involved with the main threat if it's too much work and nothing to do with her. If she wasn't there and no one brought it up, I just assumed that she decided she didn't want to go and that's it, you can't make her. On the other hand, I feel that her getting an actual scene explaining her not going to the fight shows that Toriyama felt some respect towards the character, otherwise why draw attention to it? I mean, it's far more dignified than what Yamcha and Chaozu got. She has that one moment in the Future Trunks arc where just for a laugh she teases Trunks over killing her in his timeline. That was fun. She's also fine in the Universal Survival arc. She manages to last a while, take out a few warriors, even be involved in eliminating one of the universes. Also, with her fight against Ribrianne, after endless now tired jokes about Goku and Chi-Chi and Vegeta and Bulma's dysfunctional marriages, it's nice to see one character just stand up for their spouse. No repetitive shouting matches or old jokes. I liked it. Shame Videl isn't more prominent these days because then we get more of them. However, thanks to the arc, number 18 has the most brain-dead fucking stupid line in the franchise. You sure you want to bring back these 7 destroyed universes and the uncalculable amount of lives that were lost? What about that boat you wanted? All in all, she's fine in Super, but there's just a couple bits of dumb shit. Her outfit in this game is her very first one. It may be her best still, if not it's up there. It doesn't look so great in this game though, thanks to the sprite work. Everyone looks kind of squat in this game. For me, it's the striped sleeves on the shirt that really make it work. I actually forget how little she wears this outfit in the series itself, because it's always her default outfit in every game she's in. It gets shredded after her very first fight with Vegeta. Her counterpart in Trunks' timeline wears it too though, so I guess that helps. I defeat her with Vegeta and move on to a fight against Cell in his first form. He has a sort of telekinetic slam with half circle forward and kick, and a tail swipe with down back up forward and kick, a slide with quarter circle back to down and kick, a blast that travels along the floor like number 18's with quarter circle back to down and ki blast, a health absorbing stab with his tail done with half circle back and ki blast, finally the Kamehameha with quarter circle back, forward and ki blast, and the Makanko Sappo with back to down forward and ki blast. Cell is actually my favourite villain, which is funny because I remember at the time I was annoyed by his introduction. I was kind of impatient and just thinking, another villain? This story's gonna go on even longer. But Cell when he first appears is so creepy, and watching that guy absorb just melt into his tail is really fucked up. It's also a good break from having the new villain show up stronger than everyone. Other heroes could have stopped him right away, but Cell keeps avoiding them while slowly getting stronger. It also gives us a brilliant image of Piccolo hunched over watching TV waiting for his next sighting. Of course, he only exists because Kazuhiko Torishima, after complaining about number 19 and number 20 being underwhelming, did the same for the next 3 artificial humans. Toriyama pulls off swapping the villain a second time pretty well. It's not just another "I'm the big bad now" and killing of the previous villains. He needs them to function and the heroes need to keep him away from them, but they can't find them. And while all this is going on, number 17 and number 18 are completely unaware. The whole mystery surrounding his introduction is very good too, finding an exact copy of Trunks' time machine that's been there a year before Trunks himself ever appeared. Shame still kinda blows the entire mystery by giving his identity and goals at the first opportunity, but it's still good to me. I will admit that Cell isn't as interesting a villain as Vegeta or Frieza, especially once he gained his perfect form. I still think he works as a low-key dark mirror of Goku, holding the world hostage over his desire for a good fight. I find that Dragon Ball fandom overpraises some really nothing characters just for some very vague badassness that I don't see. But Cell is one of the few characters where I think cool factor actually works and elevates him. And while his humiliation from Gohan isn't as strong as Frieza's, I find the actual beating more satisfying. Cell has some strong getting ass kicked faces. And while he does rip off Frieza's attempt to blow up the planet because he's a bad loser, his method is far more practical, and were enough Goku luckily crash landing on a random planet 4 years earlier, no one would have been able to do anything about it and he would win. I also like that the creation of Dr. Geros that shows the least interest in achieving his goal of revenge against Goku, the one who was entirely in it for his own gain, is the one who kills Goku, and it wasn't even his main priority because he was blowing himself up to spite Gohan mainly. He does kick off the trend of overpowered regeneration abilities that some later villains would take further to boring results though. When it comes to his first form specifically, I really like it. I do not at all get what Toriyama's then editor Yu Kondo was seeing when he thought this form looked stupid. A lot of people found the second form to look stupid, not just him, but the first? The only thing I find suspect is his mouth and cock area looking the same. The insect theme fits really well, the hero's trying to stamp out this bug that keeps getting away, and you gotta love that sound effect for him walking from the anime. That's still stuck in my head so many years later. That's about it for Cell. He had a bit of anime filler after his death, and the GT appearance I already talked about with Frieza. I will say I like the gag with him trying to absorb Goku, only for him to just crawl his way back out of Cell's ass. But apart from that, he hasn't been used again. Well, there's that illusion forest thing in Super, but that doesn't count, that's nothing. I'm glad, because it means he hasn't had what happened to Frieza happen to him. The most likely reason is no one wants to keep having to draw all his spots all the time, but if that's all it takes to stop a shitty return of Cell, then I'll take it. Not to mention there's no one who even bothered to try reviving him, the guy who was only publicly known for 10 days before he died with no allies. Unless some doomsday cult started up based around him, but I don't want to be giving anyone any ideas. I defeat Cell with Vegeta and move on to a fight against the 8th and final member of the default playable cast, Artificial Human number 16. Hang on, this fight never happened. He has some rapid kicks with forward, back, forward and kick, and a jumping knee with down, back, up, forward and kick. He has this move where he just holds out 2 fists either side of himself with forward, back, forward and punch, and just waits for you to walk your own face into it. Only a total idiot would fall for it, which is why it hit me a lot. He also has I-beams with forward, back, forward and ki blast. His rocket punch is done with quarter circle back, forward and ki blast, and his strongest attack, Hell's Flash, is half circle forward and ki blast. I like number 16. He's a bit of a repeat of number 8 from the Red Ribbon arc, even having his number be double number 8. But their personalities are different enough for me that I couldn't call number 16 pointless. They're both gentle giants deemed failures for their peaceful natures, but number 8 is more emotional I'd say. While we see him talking to Goku, he has big smiles and he's moved to tears when the mayor of Jingle Village adopts him. He's very childlike and innocent. Number 16 is more calm and reserved when he isn't fighting. When he smiles, it's not huge ones like number 8, but more like he's simply content. If they were part of the big cast gatherings, number 8 would be in there and chatting to the others while number 16 would be in the back relaxing, just happy to observe everyone else. That's how I see it anyway. I've said before that there are many times where Dragon Ball fandom lauds certain characters for their stoic badassery, when in reality that badassery is just based on their default expression being frown, and they have very little character otherwise. Nail, Future Gohan and Pai Gohan are the 3 that always come to mind for me. Number 16 would almost fall into that category too, but for me he just manages to save himself and be a pretty likeable character. I also really like his design. As Toriyama's art style became more angular, some characters' designs started to blend together. But one thing I feel improved during this is his big guys. Compare huge angry looking fish shooting Toriyama Red Ribbon robots by looking at Sergeant Metallic and number 16. It's a bit unfair comparing a major character to a one-off parody, but I feel number 16 has a more appealing design than Metallic. I feel like his green armour comes very close to looking dumb, but the proportions of it compared to his body shape just make it work very well. Also, is there a character design out there who draws cooler mohawks than Toriyama? I don't think there is. And thanks to being purely mechanical, more extreme violence can be shown against him than we'd usually see against a heroic character. His head casing being smashed open was one thing, but seeing his whole body blown apart with his head flying towards the frame was a genuinely disturbing scene. I mean, in the manga we see his eyeballs popping out when Cell crushes his head, and his death does have a big impact and leads to the end of the arc, being used as a trigger for Super Saiyan 2. I'll talk more about people's issues with that bit later when I talk about Gohan. One more thing I like is that after Cell crushes his head, he's just gone. I'm sure people would love to see number 16, revived by Shenlong with his Goku killing goal removed, become part of the gang. But having his death be permanent meant there was actual lasting consequences to Cell's appearance, even if it's just one guy. I mean, there's Goku's death, but he still comes back eventually. It makes his character more meaningful to me than if he became just another background Gawker in the Buu arc, because that's all that would happen. Plus number 17 becoming a ranger in the modern era, fulfilling number 16's dying wish of the animals he loved being protected. It's just about the only slightly interesting thing about number 17, even if it's most likely unintentional. Speaking of the modern era, he hasn't been brought back yet, thank God. But there was that 2014 interview where Toriyama made up on the spot that number 16 was modelled after Dr. Gero's dead son, who was a red ribbon soldier killed by an enemy bullet, and that his great strength and peaceful nature was to keep him from being destroyed. It's a nice idea, but the fact that it came out 21 years after these two characters were done and means nothing in the series itself makes it just a waste. If Toriyama wants to tell us this is the case, then he should have thought of it back when the series was ongoing so he could include it then and it would actually mean something. I defeat number 16 with Vegeta. That was the default roster. The next 3 fights are all against secret characters, so now I can finally talk about them. To use 5 more characters outside of the story mode fights some are allowed in, you have to input a code. During the intro before the title screen, hold the shoulder buttons and at the same time rotate one thumb across the face buttons clockwise and the other across the D-pad or stick anti-clockwise. First you'll hear a chime that unlocks mirror matches. Keep it up and you'll hear Goku scream, which indicates you've unlocked the other 5 characters. Strange to think there was a time when 2 players wanted to be the same character could be locked behind a cheat. The first 2 I've been able to use in story mode for a while now, the Super Saiyan variants of Goku and Vegeta. Super Saiyan Goku first. He shares many of the regular Goku's moves. He loses the homing Genkidama, Super Genkidama and Kaioken. In exchange he gets a generic homing blast with quarter circle forward and ki blast, a kicking combo with half circle forward and back, and the Super Kamehameha with half circle back and ki blast. I love the original design for Goku's Super Saiyan form. Not too many spikes, the lack of detail, the shade of yellow. I still think it looked its best when it first appeared. Later on the form will look more spiky and brighter, and I still think it looks very good, just not quite as good. Super Saiyan in the modern stuff has just looked awful though. It already suffers from 2010's Dragon Ball's ugly plasticky art style, but the piss yellow use of the hair doesn't help things either. Here's a fun story about my own history watching Super Saiyan. When we had the next episode preview showing a quick flash of Goku with golden hair, it genuinely surprised me. This is despite the fact that for weeks we had ads showing a golden haired Goku fighting Frieza, and my parents were adamant that that's most likely what Super Saiyan would turn out to be. I disregarded it because I remember those ads having a sort of coloured filter or overlay over it, so I thought it was just messing with the colour of his hair. This is also despite every episode in the dub that aired at that point having Goku go Super Saiyan at the end of the opening. That one just never clicked in my head. I was expecting Super Saiyan to be a more symbolic thing, or a state of being, much in the same way Vegeta thought it was during that arc, funnily enough. I was a dumb 7 or 8 year old. The stuff just before the transformation is the only time where I think I benefited from them skipping to Dragon Ball Z over here. I'm mainly talking about Kuririn's death. I had some vague knowledge that he had died once before from comments before the Raditz fight, but since in the UK we were never shown that until after GT had finished airing, it never really sunk in. For months I only had Raditz's arrival to Gohan attacking Frieza in his third form airing on loop. I wouldn't get access to the internet until a few months after the Cell arc had finished airing, so it's not like I could find out anything else. That section was my only basis for Dragon Ball knowledge, so in my limited experience from watching that 1 3/4 of a story arc repeatedly, Gohan and Kuririn were the fighters who stuck in my head as the ones that didn't die. I'd watched the others' deaths in the Saiyan arc many times, so when we get to that episode and Frieza blows up Kuririn, and since you're not expecting it to happen, it doesn't register until you see the smoky cloud where he used to be. That was terrifying. It was wrong. Kuririn doesn't die. I'd watched everything available in the UK many times over and never saw that before. So there was one way not having context from the first 6 story arcs actually enhanced things. It doesn't make up for it though. I wonder if anyone else was thinking this too. As the long drawn out Frieza fight was going on, me and the rest of my family were genuinely wondering whether or not it was a permanent change. Would Goku stay golden haired forever? That question was answered in the preview for the episode with Frieza's Kienzan. That one shot of an angry black haired Goku with Frieza's new purple attack floating behind him also got the speculation going. I guess that this purple thing somehow drained the Super Saiyan from him, like getting hit by a Goomba shrinking a large Mario. It never occurred to me back then the possibility that Goku may be able to just turn it off if he wanted to, so my mind was blown when he simply powered down. I have a few more comments for the form itself, but I'll save them for the next character I'm talking about, Super Saiyan Vegeta. That's because there's not as much left to talk about here. Even gameplay wise, there is no change. Super Saiyan Vegeta has the exact same moveset as regular Vegeta. I don't care much for Vegeta's Super Saiyan design. It's the least different from the untransformed state of all the main characters' Super Saiyan forms. I get it, Vegeta's hair is already spiked up by default, and thanks to his really high hairline, there's no bangs that will be lifted up either. His first transformation isn't shown in the manga, like Gohan's, but comparing the anime versions of what I guess are the main 4 Super Saiyan transformations, his also comes up short. I've already explained Goku's, but there's more emotion in Future Trunks' than Gohan's too. It's similar to Gohan's in that he's triggered by anger himself, but Gohan's feelings of being useless just do more for me than Vegeta hitting a wall. After what I said about being surprised with Goku's transformation, would it surprise you if I said I was not ever expecting Vegeta to get it either, despite a shot of it once again being in the opening of just about every episode that aired in the UK by then? I wasn't the most perceptive kid. So with Super Saiyan becoming more common, especially into the Buu arc, along came the criticism that the form was ruined or overdone. The legend is diminished because a pair of kids get it with no trouble, and I get where people are coming from, but it doesn't bother me. First, the kids thing with Goten and Trunks. I don't think it's fair to draw the line at them. Saying the 5th and 6th Super Saiyans diminish the legend and not anyone after the 1st doesn't make much sense to me. Either it's just Goku or all the living Saiyans can be Super Saiyans. You can't just give a pass to future Trunks, Vegeta or Gohan because you like them more. Now that doesn't mean I like the idea of every Saiyan gaining the form because... Part 2. Goten and Trunks got it too easy. Well, yes, but that's the joke. Toriyama is a comedy writer before all else, and the Buu arc is a big return to his comedic roots. Also, the next generation being naturally stronger than the last is a common theme in Dragon Ball. Just as Gohan was born with far more natural power than Goku, Goten and Trunks were born with far more natural power than Gohan. It's just in this case, Goten and Trunks decided not to pursue the path of strength that their dads did. It's also why I do not like Bardock getting Super Saiyan in an episode of Bardock and it just being a part of that character's identity now. For one thing, it clashes with the point of Bardock as a no-name guy who tried but didn't make a difference before dying and being forgotten. Plus, Goku is supposed to be the one who fulfills the legend. He's not the only one, but he's the one who makes it real and paves the way for the others to reach it. Bardock gaining the form does diminish it because now it wasn't Goku's accomplishment, it's just because of his super cool dad. Thirdly, Dragon Ball is about progression. No matter what people say, the falsely rumoured planned ending about Goku killing Frieza and dying in Narek's explosion is not a good ending for the series and goes against the themes of Dragon Ball itself. Plus, the Frieza arc leaves too much unresolved, such as Gohan. If Dragon Ball was to continue, Super Saiyan cannot be the endpoint, or exclusive to Goku, because then no one can progress. Yes, it did lead to Saiyans taking over the spotlight for the rest of the series and render the Earthlings irrelevant for fighting, and that's a shame. But it's just how these things go. Not being able to fight the big new villain shouldn't prevent a character from having a useful role. Just look at Bulma for proof of that. The guy who keeps pushing himself to the next level isn't gonna go, oh well, this is legendary, I guess I stop here. No, he's gonna decide, well, what's next? What's Goku gonna do? Decide that's all because of a legend of a group of murderous arseholes he never knew or cared about? Now, I do have issues with the God forms, but this part has gone on long enough, so I'll talk about all the later forms when I play a game that includes them. Next, the legend is kind of overhyped by fans. It's introduced just under halfway through the story arc 8 out of 10 and resolves maybe 4/5 of the way through story arc 8 out of 10. It's not some years long foreshadowed build up, it was 37 chapters between introduction and payoff. Which is a long time weekly, yes, but that's 37 chapters out of a 92 chapter story arc. Or if you take the entire 519 chapter series into account, only 7.13% of the entire series was spent building up to Super Saiyan. It was all handled very well, but the amount of build up is vastly overstated. And finally, back tingles. Ooh, this is a new big one. I may as well talk about it now because it'll be a long ass time before I make it to play a game that has cauliflower in it. The back tingles are simply describing the channeling of ki throughout the body. This is rooted in the very Taoist mythology and wuxia fiction that Dragon Ball takes inspiration from. It's Dragon Ball at its purest. I won't defend much in that shitty arc, but I will defend that moment with that wording. I'm not a wuxia expert and my knowledge is basically limited to Dragon Ball inspirations, so I'll not go further myself. I'd recommend to look at the channeling of ki through meridian pathways and Dantian hemispheres to see what I mean. Also, the rest of the issue people have with that scene is yet more but power scaling, and I give so little of a shit. So next I'll move on to Future Trunks, who only appears in his Super Saiyan form. My next fight is against him, and in this game's version of events, everyone just piled into the room of spirit and time at once to train. Trunks also has a dive kick with forward down and kick while in the air. He has a knee flip with down back up forward and kick, a triple flip with half circle forward and kick, a dashing elbow with quarter circle back and punch, a rapid ki blast with quarter circle back and ki blast, Burning attack is done with half circle forward and key blast. This is the attack he used to distract Frieza before killing him, and I believe this is the first piece of media that actually names the attack. He never actually names it in the series itself. Finish Buster is done with quarter circle back, forward and key blast. Finish Buster has been a staple of Trunks' moveset in many games, but it actually originates in this game. He never used that attack in the series itself. In fact, just about all of Trunks' techniques were only named in or made up for the video games. Future Trunks has one of the best introductions of any Dragon Ball character. Having him show up out of nowhere to face Frieza, after the very long Frieza fight on Namek and killing him easily in 2 chapters. Not only that, but this new kid out of nowhere can become a Super Saiyan when the series hadn't yet given any indication that it wasn't exclusive to Goku. Then he drops the bombshell that he's Vegeta and Bulma's son, which was completely out of nowhere at the time. Although it's clear it was only because Bulma was the only female character available to have Vegeta's child since Lunch was written out years ago. But then, the guy who effortlessly diced Frieza says he's no match for the next threat, just to show the level of danger they're dealing with. It's great. Funny thing about Trunks is I somehow guessed, but not really, his parentage before it was revealed. I didn't outright predict that he was Bulma and Vegeta's son, but remember when I mentioned being surprised at Vegeta gaining Super Saiyan despite it being in the opening? Remember who appears right after Vegeta in the opening? Whenever I saw that part, I was just wondering why they put a shot of Vegeta wearing a jacket and using a sword in the opening. And when Trunks finally appears in the series itself and we get all the panning shots without seeing his face, I saw the greyish purple hair, saw the capsule cork plug on the jacket and saw the sword. My assumption for a few seconds was that Dr. Brief had decided to take on Frieza himself and brought a sword because he's not a martial artist and wouldn't win in a fistfight. I didn't realise the significance of mistaking Trunks for his father and grandfather episodes before that would be revealed until I sat down and racked my brain through all thoughts and memories for this script. For the rest of the Cell arc, Trunks doesn't have quite the same impact after he returns and he's all, "You fucking idiots, that's not what I warned you about," while trying to hide the original printing of chapter 335 at the same time. He pretty much exists to get beat up on and to drag the first Perfect Cell fight out just a little longer. And as I said before, I just didn't care much for the father-son relationship between him and Vegeta. You do feel a little bad for him though, trying to win over a guy whose very existence pissed him off so much. His return to the future and utter bulldozing through the artificial humans is very satisfying and a nice way of showing how far he came in those 2 or so weeks he spent in the past. I'm very mixed on what I prefer between the manga and anime for his Super Saiyan transformation. On one hand, Trunks already having Super Saiyan before Gohan dies, rendering his death pointless, does add to the utter hopelessness of his timeline. But on the other hand, the TV special is just superior to Trunks the story in every way, and the scene where Trunks transforms was amazingly done. Takeshi Kusao just killed it in that scene. As for his Super Saiyan form, Trunks is the most dynamic. Thanks to his growing hair we get to see 3 different styles for him. The short-haired Super Saiyan, long but tied back, which is the one in this game, and long but all over the place. His outfit in this game is the same style Vegeta wears, and as I said back when I was talking about Vegeta, I much prefer this one on Trunks. I think what helps is that it's the only style Trunks wears, so I can't compare it to 3 previous styles I liked more. It is unexpected thinking about it though, that Trunks' iconic jacket and sword isn't used for his first ever fighting game. The jacket and sword wouldn't be playable for another 2 years until the release of Dragon Ball Z 2 Super Battle, 2 years after he was written out of the story. The battle jacket he wears here was his current outfit at the time, so it makes sense. I really appreciate that Toriyama had Trunks stay in the future and let his story be finished. He could have easily made an excuse to keep him around, like when he changed his mind on Vegeta dying for good in the Saiyan arc and kept him around. But unlike Vegeta, keeping future Trunks around wouldn't have done him any favours. It also allows you to actually miss him and not get sick of him staying around past the point where it makes sense. My only real issue with Trunks in the original series is that his birth required assassinating Yamcha's character, but I'll get to that when I talk about Yamcha in Budokai. So now we move on to them bringing Trunks back in Super for the future Trunks arc. I'll start with the good. The scenes of him catching up with the main cast after he returns to the present are very good. I already talked about the moment with number 18, but also the episode with Gohan. Trunks seeing the completely different road Gohan's life went compared to his timeline and being taken aback at first, but genuinely happy for him was a great episode, and an ultimate fuck you to the crowd who wants Gohan to be another Vegeta. But also him seeing Gohan's life so good, reminding him of the life that was stolen from him by Black, was a great scene too. I also like how no matter the continuity, Pan always exists to make Trunks' life harder. Now for the mixed, Trunks' relationship with Mai. It was unexpected that they'd decide to expand the gag from Battle of Gods with their main timeline counterparts into a serious relationship. Hell, a romantic relationship for future Trunks was never anything I considered in general. He didn't seem like the kind of person with the time. Even his much more light-hearted, fun-loving main timeline counterpart didn't get that. In GT, they decided Goten's romantic life was more worth following. But I liked it. There was actual chemistry there and more effort put in than most of the already existing relationships from the original series. You can tell Toriyama isn't writing this directly because by his own admission, he doesn't do romance. It just brings up a lot of questions. The Super manga did eventually explain that Pilaf, Shu and Mai got their youth wish earlier in Trunks' timeline, which is why she manages to be the same age as Trunks. But what always bothers me is, does Trunks know? The de-aging didn't affect her memories or experience, so she still has the life experience of the woman in her late 60s to early 70s. Does Trunks know that his girlfriend is actually older than his mother? The age gap isn't a problem, they're both adults, but you can't help but think about it and the lack of answer always bothered me. Plus, it leads to that awful love triangle between a man in his 30s, his child self, and a 40-something-year-old woman in a child's body. I genuinely think the writers simply forgot that Mai in the main timeline isn't actually a child. Present Mai's attraction to future Trunks is fine, even if she was actually a child, kids still have crushes. But the imagery we see with her and future Trunks still looks wrong with all the loving gazes from him. But the worst part is that they try to sort of write an actual relationship being there between present Mai and Trunks. No. She still has all the memories and life experience of the 40-something. She's basically an adult woman pretending to be a child to woo an actual child, and I don't think it was intentional. This was just lack of care when writing the story. But now my big issue. All the stuff I praised was very nice, but it doesn't belong in the story they're telling. The Future Trunks arc is about a Kaioshin who is driven mad by the very unserious nature of the Dragon Ball world, where a single man can talk casually to the gods and even reach their state of being and people don't really bat an eyelid. So he takes revenge on that world and its gods. And that has nothing to do with Future Trunks. People complain about Goku being given the spotlight, but Zalasu's enemy is Goku. This arc is absolutely Goku's story. Bringing Trunks in feels like it was done for two reasons. First is the obvious one, he's marketable. Second is that his timeline is expendable, so you can have it and everyone in it destroyed. Thing is, that also weakens his original ending. I don't mind a downer ending, I was the guy hoping the next arc would end on a somber note with the other universes gone. But you took a storyline that was wrapped up neatly for 23 years and just went, nah. And that's a huge shame. Plus it leads to the mess of sending Trunks and Mai to a new timeline that's just like his, but now there's two of each of them. At least send him to Cell's timeline where his Trunks is already dead. Also, his new Super Saiyan form is dumb like all the other new ones. That's about it. I once again defeat Trunks with Vegeta. I've only had Vegeta available since losing Goku against Frieza and Piccolo against number 18. This is all the same continue since the Frieza fight. This leads to a fight against the fourth secret character, Son Gohan. Like Trunks, Gohan only appears in his Super Saiyan form. He has a dive kick with forward down and kick while in the air, a flip kick with down back up forward and kick, a sliding kick with quarter circle forward and kick, a rapid punch with forward back forward and punch, a rapid ki blast with quarter circle forward and ki blast, the Masenko with circle back to down forward and ki blast, finally the Kamehameha with a half circle forward and ki blast. Gohan is my favourite Dragon Ball character. I think being a child at the time the show was airing in the UK helped, but he is the biggest example of that part of Dragon Ball I love, where the characters actually age and grow up. Goku gets taller and his personality does change, but he stays the same guy at heart and in appearance. Gohan from his first appearance at 4 years old is unrecognisable as a guy in his late 20s with a daughter at the end of the series. I really enjoy his role in the Saiyan arc, not just for his part in Piccolo's redemption, but in the fighting. People take issue with Gohan crumbling under the pressure in a fight against Nappa, especially with the anime dedicating many episodes to him growing in that year of preparation, only for him to give in to fear at the end. I like it, you can only prepare someone so much. Preparing Gohan for a situation he's never been in isn't a substitute for actually experiencing it. In our own history, so many fully grown adults have gone off to war thinking it'll be glorious and they'll be heroes, only to be unable to cope with the reality when it actually happens. They were adults, and this is a 5-year-old whose year of training results in watching the actual adults die horribly around him. And he does grow past his fear of the Saiyans in the end and is instrumental in defeating Vegeta, so he still grows as a character. One thing I have to bring up is the series making out Gohan to be spoiled because he can't survive in the wilderness and Piccolo picks him shit apples to eat. He's 4! Have you seen an actual 4-year-old? They're all picky nightmares with food. He's no different. Hell, in the original printing of Gohan's first chapter, he was 3 before Toriyama bumped his age up a year in the next chapter. I don't have too much to say about Gohan in the Frieza arc. I've already praised the dynamic between the heroes, Vegeta and Frieza's force, so I'd just be repeating myself. I like how he manages to snatch Vegeta's victory by taking his Dragon Ball at the last second and keeping it from Vegeta. That was a tense scene. I also like his fight with Recoome and how he's the one who lasts longest until Recoome's just, I'm gonna break the 5-year-old's neck now. It was a bit repetitive they did the Gohan gets angry for his friend's suffering and goes apeshit on 2 Frieza forms in a row. Now Gohan in the Cell arc. I think the twist of Goku having been preparing Gohan to fight Cell works well. Yes, Gohan isn't much in the arc beforehand, and Toriyama clearly was not intending Gohan to take centre stage when the arc started. But for me it helps the twist, because if Gohan was too prominent beforehand, it might have given the game away. Those little moments where Gohan's wondering why Goku is holding back, only for it to turn out he isn't, and that Gohan had just become so much stronger than Goku, that Goku didn't look powerful in comparison, I really liked. It also says a lot that at no point during that did Gohan ever consider he might have surpassed his dad, just like those of us reading or watching back then. Yes, Gohan doesn't have much of a personal connection with Cell, but does anyone else? I mean, I guess Kuririn had to watch Cell shove his new crush right up his arsehole, but Kuririn was never going to take down Cell. There's Piccolo, Vegeta and Trunks, but they just got beat up, not much of a personal connection. I'll take the chance to talk about his outfit in the Super Saiyan form here. It's another variant of the Piccolo outfit and it's always worked well. I know the cape isn't for fighting, but the costume looks so much better on him with it and I cannot believe that version has never once been playable. Oh wait, it has. Sort of. Only on a What If Super Saiyan 3 form for the teenage Gohan in Heroes. But never on the version of Gohan that actually wore it. His Super Saiyan is closer to Vegeta territory than Goku and Trunks, being mostly a palette swap. But I just feel it works better than Vegeta's palette swap. The manga skips over Gohan gaining this form just like it did with Vegeta. Just like Vegeta, the anime includes this scene. I really like it. One of the kinda polite and more selfless Saiyans gains this form not through anger at another's death and the need for revenge, or from a wounded ego, but from anger at himself for letting others down and feeling useless. I also wish that long-haired Super Saiyan Gohan could be playable in at least one game. Please Bandai Namco, do not give Cell Era Gohan Super Saiyan 3. It was bad enough when you gave Bardock all fucking 4 of them. Of course, Gohan does get a traditional rage-triggered transformation, which brings me to his fight with Cell. I get that Gohan's dislike of fighting and not wanting to kill Cell wasn't brought up beforehand, but I can also believe that just barely being a decade old, depending on whether you have Gohan at 9, 10 or 11 here, and having spent 5 years doing nothing but train for fights might sour you on the subject. When it comes to not wanting to kill Cell, people bring up that one henchman of Frieza's that he killed. For one, that was literally half his life ago and people change. Second, that was spurred the moment self-defense that was over in seconds and there wasn't really time to think. Gohan had the entire year training with Goku, plus another 9 days to think about the possibility of having to kill Cell. They're two completely different situations. I also think that Gohan's fear of losing control when he gets angry is valid, and that just relying on him to get angry on command wasn't going to work. So, the criticism that Gohan doesn't even know number 16, he never spoke to him until then, why is his death causing the transformation? Well, to me, it wasn't that it was number 16 that did it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. This is on top of Cell making him watch his dad and friends being utterly destroyed. Not to mention, it was needlessly cruel. Number 16 was just ahead, he could do nothing to defend himself or harm Cell in any way. Add to that, number 16 gave up his life with no afterlife just to talk Gohan around. This is the one main character who grew up to become a literal superhero. Of course, senseless murder of an innocent is gonna piss him off, just like he flew off the handle when Cargo was killed back in the Frieza arc, despite Gohan never speaking to him. I'd hate to see this alternate version of that moment where number 16's head is crushed and Gohan just goes, I never knew that guy anyway. That criticism has always felt very robotic to me, like, beat boot person X does not have sufficient emotion points towards person Y he cannot care. The following fight with Cell after Gohan reaches Super Saiyan 2 is very satisfying. I do like that Gohan is proven right in that he does kind of lose control when he decides he wants to make Cell suffer. He gets punished for losing control like that by having it lead to his dad's death. But that death was also Goku's punishment for the way he handled his Gohan plan, so they both paid for their mistakes. And the one-handed Kamehameha with Goku's image behind him is such a striking image, I love it. When it comes to the Buu arc, I really enjoy Gohan's school and Saiyaman antics. The extended mini-arc in the anime was especially fun. It's a shame Toriyama gave up on it right away. It's also a shame he gave up on Gohan in general. Goku is the main character, even if Gohan got a little chance. But Gohan got utterly wasted in the end. So many chapters sat in the background waiting through that ritual. It keeps him out of much of the arc and prevents him from being there to stop almost everyone he knows, including his mother and girlfriend, from being killed. And then once it's done, it's rendered worthless in no time by more villain transformations. Toriyama himself said he didn't feel Gohan was suited for the role of main character. Well, he isn't the main character, but I think that's also because he kept trying to write him in those situations as Goku, not as Gohan. The thing is, no one had any faith in this character by then. It wasn't just Toriyama. Look at the 2 films that star him. DBZ Movie 9 had Gohan unable to win alone and require Goku to break the laws of life and death to give Gohan the chance to win. And despite it being advertised as his film, DBZ Movie 10 isn't Gohan's film. Goten, Trunks and Videl are the main characters and Gohan doesn't appear until close to the end just for the fighting. And they still had to have Goku appear at the end to help them win. Garlic Jr. filler arc aside, no one with creative control believed Gohan could carry a story without Goku. To be honest, and let me be clear, this is 100% speculation, I believe that Toriyama deciding to end the manga where he did is what screwed Gohan in the Buu arc. Goku coming back was inevitable. Dragon Ball was simply not going to end with Goku dead. I feel that if Toriyama wasn't burned out and had one more arc in him, Gohan would have been the one to defeat Buu, and Goku would have been brought back in the next arc for the end. But Toriyama deciding he was done rushed that along and Gohan had to be sacrificed. I remember as a kid being so disappointed that after avoiding death all series, Gohan dies because he was having a nap while the planet was blowing up around him. All the other main characters before him had emotional scenes, but Gohan was just snoozing away. But on a more positive note, Gohan and Videl are my favourite couple in Dragon Ball. The fact that Toriyama tried helps. There was no "and then they were married off screen." It's still very basic, but what was there was very cute. Those moments where Gohan is teaching just a regular person, a strong one but still regular in the context of Dragon Ball's world, to be a lot of fun. It's honestly one of my favourite sections in the series. Although I do hate that moment in Videl's fight with Spopovich where Gohan's patronising Dick with the "he's not going easy on you even though you're a girl." Like, it's a fucking competition. Yeah, he's very cruel and brutal, but that dialogue just shouldn't have been there. They have some nice moments in Super too, but I have some issues with Videl's characterisation in that which I'll have to wait for another video for because she's not in this game. I find Gohan a little disappointing in GT. I don't mind him not being a focus of the fighting, his time has passed, but he is the father of one of the show's main characters, and apart from one moment where he's infected by Baby, they do absolutely nothing with that relationship. It's completely wasted. When I watch GT, I honestly forget they're even parent and child. Instead, all the time goes to Pan and Goku's relationship and the weird, almost crush they'd sometimes imply Pan has, like the writers would forget he's a grandfather sometimes. Although GT has a few creepy moments with Pan that I'd rather talk about when I get to a game that has her. And for the last time in this video, I'll talk about the modern era. I really like Gohan's role in Battle of Gods. His drunken Saiyaman antics were fun, and only in Dragon Ball can superhero gets his pregnant wife shot work as a joke. But they also tied Videl's pregnancy into the film, and this is the only time in Dragon Ball we see a character learn they're going to be a parent on screen. It's a really sweet scene. F kicks off my biggest problem with Gohan in modern Dragon Ball. You'd think based on my comment in the Trunks part about being happy with Gohan's life, I'd be satisfied with the way Gohan was phased out. I'm fine with it as an idea, but I really don't like how it's executed. Yes, the series has always flip-flopped on Gohan retiring as a fighter or coming back in stronger than ever. That's not the flip-flopping I have issue with. I hate that the series can't decide if that's a good thing. We've had all these scenes where Gohan is told, if you win this you don't have to fight anymore and can finally go to school like you wanted. Or in the anime version of the God of Destruction Champa arc where Goku is fully understanding of Gohan having to put his future above a fight. But then we get moments like F and the manga version of the Champa arc where he's admonished or just generally shit on for doing just that and not prioritising training over the rest of his life. You can't say, it's okay, you can bow out now, and follow it up with, why did you bow out, what's wrong with you? Which is it? As a fan, I don't need Gohan to be made stronger or push into the current fight. I don't want to see him get a new exclusive Super Saiyan Mega Dick Smasher turquoise that only he can use. I just want the series to treat his retiring from fighting with dignity. One more complaint is that artists just do not know how to draw Gohan anymore. This is what his face looks like at that point. As far back as GT, they keep giving him Vegeta's face. It got especially bad in the Universal Survival arc. But apart from that, I liked his small role in the Future Trunks arc. He also got one of the few moments I really liked in the Universal Survival arc. The moment where he is the one to cause Universe 10's erasure, finds Obuni's picture of his family before it goes too, and just stops to think of the sheer amount of deaths he just caused. And it's not his fault, only one universe can survive, it's just that his survival means the deaths of countless others. Shame it was undone. Apparently he isn't in the new Broly film. It's for the best. It's better to not have him show up at all than to have him chewed out for daring to have a life beyond being a meathead. Gohan took a while, but I finally beat him with Goku. This just leaves the final fight against Perfect Cell. For this fight, Trunks, Gohan and number 16 are all added to my party. Perfect Cell has a dive kick with the usual command. He has a spin attack with down back, up forward and kick. He has a sliding attack with quarter circle back to down and kick. He has a command grab with half circle back and kick. A rapid ki blast with quarter circle back and ki blast. He has a powered up Makan Kosapo with quarter circle back, forward and ki blast. Finally he has his own Genki Dama with half circle forward and ki blast. I've already spoken about my thoughts on Cell as a character, so I'll just talk about this form in general. I like having him become more human as he absorbs the artificial humans. It's just a cool design. I don't have anything else left. But I will give you a bit of trivia. Did you know Cell has been the final boss of more fighting games than any other villain? Cell has this game, Super Battle, Budokai, and Super Dragon Ball Z. The various forms of Buu come second with Ultimate Battle 22, The Legend and Budokai 2, then Broly with 2, Burst Limit and Super Butoden 2 if you count the secret ending, then the others only have one, or it's a game where the final boss is dependent on the character or route you choose. And that's the entire roster. Being the first fighting game roster and in 1993 is a pretty good one. My only request these days for new games is to have one character that hasn't been playable before. Heroes type stuff doesn't count. And probably being the first, all 13 characters are making their fighting game debut. Even if the arcade game did come out first, it's still 5 characters making their first appearance, plus 3 more never before playable variants. There are only 7 Dragon Ball characters I outright dislike, and none of them are in this game. 5 didn't even exist at the time the game was made, and one of them would have been created far too late to be included. In the end, the Cell game is won by Trunks just cartwheeling into Cell until he dies. We're then shown Dende using the Dragon Balls to revive those killed by Cell before I get the end screen, but I'm still not done. Turns out there's a true ending. I have to play through the entire game on the highest difficulty and win each fight using the correct character, basically the canon character for that fight. You've most likely seen many of my losses, as I probably needed to use a lot of that footage because I talked so damn much about everyone. This was a nightmare. This game was unfun and hard enough by default. What doesn't help is that majority of the fights need to be won as Goku, who doesn't have a good AI killing move. There's a reason Piccolo and Vegeta got most of the wins first time around. Piccolo took about 20 minutes. He ended up taking very careful use of the dive kick, jump kick and poking him with my toes. Eventually I trap him in a loop where he keep jumping and letting me dive kick him to death. Vegeta took hours. I still had to win this one as Goku. Gaining close was just not an option, so I had to hang back, throwing out ki blasts and Genki Damas until he failed to block enough and was down. Frieza took even longer, but Super Saiyan Goku is a little better than regular Goku. The problem at this point is that when the character I need to win with dies, I have to just sit there and wait for the AI to defeat my other two, and they take longer to kill me when I'm letting them win than they do when I'm actually trying. The AI button reads, and Frieza can counter everything with his spinning attack. So to win I inch close so I'm just the right distance that when I jump he does that attack, but it doesn't quite reach me, making him land in my toe poke. I just have to hope that he doesn't throw out any other attack and just keep it up until he eventually dies. Number 20 I have to defeat with Piccolo. My strategy wound up being loads of dive kicks followed by crouch kicks when he blocks them. He barely tried blocking the crouch kicks and I didn't take much damage on my successful attempt. Number 18 needs to be defeated with Vegeta. She took a while but nowhere near as long as the last 3. Around the same amount of time as Piccolo. I jump kick, walk back a little to bait her into throwing a ki blast, jump kick her again and repeat the pattern. Exploiting AI patterns was the only way to win. Still I had to defeat with Piccolo and I never needed to work out a strategy because I defeated him first try. I just backed him into a corner and used the dive kick and crouch kick strategy I first used on Piccolo. Number 16 took the longest. You have to win this fight as Goku despite this not being an actual fight in the series. Once again this wound up being a load of jumping around waiting for the one moment my dive kick would go through. It wasn't as efficient as it was on the others I dive kicked to death though. When I did win it was just pure luck that he didn't decide to destroy me that round. Trunks was an easy one. I have to win with Vegeta. I just backed myself into the wall and kept jump kicking. Trunks would just dash right into my kick until he died. I did sometimes have to move around to bait him back into that pattern, but it was my quickest victory since Cell. I had to defeat Gohan as Goku. He took about 20 minutes. I just had to back him into the corner and keep dive kicking. He couldn't do anything about it and went down. But Perfect Cell was a nightmare. I have to win as Gohan and Cell would just destroy him in seconds. What was worse is I would then have to wait for him to defeat my 5 other characters before I had another chance as Gohan. It was soul-crushingly boring. I couldn't believe what the best strategy was. I just had to sit there and crouch kick. Most of the time Cell would keep flipping over me and landing in them. Then I got him in the corner and he just crumpled. I get an image of some of the heroes with some text I don't understand. This unlocks the final battle. I could choose Goku, Gohan, or Mr. Satan. Let's pick him. So the reason I go with Satan is... oh. Well, let's try again. The reason I say his name like that is... well, you have to wait for another time because now he's gone. I just picked Gohan and used the same method as before. I feel like this was put in last second because when this game started development, it was very likely that the developers had no idea Gohan was going to take over. The fact that you can choose Goku is proof to me that he hadn't even died yet when they implemented the final battle. But yeah, I beat Cell first try and get the credits. And that's Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden. So I didn't talk about the game that much because there isn't that much to say. This was an excuse to get my thoughts out on some Dragon Ball characters because Budokai is coming in the future with its 23 characters, 21 unique. And doing this game means I get all my thoughts on 9 of those characters out of the way. The game just isn't very fun. It's more enjoyable than the first Street Fighter, but not by much. It's just so slow and unresponsive. All it has going for it is a great soundtrack and a pretty good replacement soundtrack. This does tend to be a pattern with the classic Dragon Ball game trilogies though. The first game isn't so great, the second is a massive improvement, and the third is a smaller improvement enough that the second keeps a cult following that prefers it. This was a Bandai Tosei collaboration and most of them were rush cash grabs during that time. But as we'll see if we ever get to this game's sequel, The difference between a boring mess like this and a good game turned out to be just a few extra months of development. This game was just a necessary throwaway required to reach that quality. I was not expecting this to end up so long. I just had a lot I wanted to say, but I didn't think it would come to over 25,000 words.